Nice thing to have, to be able to pull up.
Commissioner, you have a live mic.
Okay, good morning, everybody. We've got a full house. We've got a lot on the agenda today, and let's go ahead and get started.
We're going to start with our invocation by Pastor James Boyd from Grove Church, Naples.
Okay, and then our pledge is going to be led today by Jeannie Marcella, who is going to be recognized for 25 years. She's the Transportation Management Services Administration Support Specialist. Is she here? Right up front? There you go. Okay, and I bet she knows every word of it. No question. Pastor?
Thank you. Father God, we come before you today in the name of your Son, Jesus. We just thank you for this opportunity to pray before this meeting, God. We know that you said in your word that where two or more are gathered in your name, that you're in our midst. So we know that right now you're in our midst, God. We see in your word that you surround your people with favor as a shield. So today we surround these commissioners, every single person in this room with favor as a shield, God. We thank you for your presence in this place, God. We can't do this without you. So we ask for wisdom today. You said in your word, when we ask, you give liberally to us, God. So we ask for wisdom in this place. We see in your word where Solomon asked for wisdom and you gave it to him, but then you gave him everything else too, God. So today, wisdom is in this place. We pray for every single commissioner to have your wisdom today, Lord, in your presence in this place, God. So we thank you for such an opportunity to bring you in this place right off the start, God. We know that today is going to create great opportunities for this county, God. So we thank you for speaking to us. We keep one ear open to you today and one ear open to the agenda so that you can have your way in every decision that takes place in this place, God. We love you and we thank you for this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Outstanding.
Commissioners, I'll take you through our change sheet. First, move item 16H2 to 10D. This is a recommendation to direct staff to prepare an LDC amendment to repeal LDC section 5.05.15, conversion of golf courses. This is being moved to the regular agenda by the separate requests of all commissioners. Several agenda notes. We are adding item 15B1, which is a rock crushing update to be heard at the end of the meeting. There's a Scrivener's error in item 16A9. The property appraiser uses 11-digit folio numbers, so the folio number of number 37774488001 should be 37742880001, removing an extra digit. And a correction to the index title for 16C3. The index title contains a typo. NCRQTP should be NCRWTP. We have a number of time certain items. Item 10C to be heard immediately following 5C. This is a recommendation to direct the clerk of the circuit court to timely transfer $30 million to the state of Florida for the State Veterans Nursing Home Project. Item 10A will be heard immediately following 9A, which is a recommendation to adopt the Collier County Health Freedom Resolution. And item 11D to be heard no sooner than 1 p.m. is a recommendation to execute a new interlocal agreement between Collier County and the Greater Naples Fire Rescue District for continued management of the Ochopee Fire District. We have court reporter breaks scheduled for 10:30 and 2:50. County Attorney?
Nothing, thank you.
Chair, changes from the board and ex parte on the summary and consent agenda.
Okay. Commissioner Cole, do you have any changes or ex parte?
Nothing on the consent agenda, no changes.
Okay. Mr. Saunders?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no disclosure in terms of ex parte. On the consent agenda, item 16K5, one of the lawyers in my firm has been requested to help mediate a Burt Harris claim for the county. He's mediated several claims. He mediated a claim for the city, same type of thing. And so apparently he's been recommended by, I'm not sure by the county attorney or who he was recommended by, but he's recommended to be a mediator for the county or for this mediation. So I'd like the record to reflect that I'm abstaining from voting on 16K5. And I did file a conflict report, though I really don't have any legal conflict, but just in the appearance of propriety, I wanted to file that disclaimer.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Commissioner Hall.
I don't have anything on the consent agenda. I do have on 17A one email.
Okay. All right. Commissioner McDaniel.
Yeah, no, I have no, thank you, sir. I have no changes, and I also have a disclosure of meetings and emails on 17A.
Okay.
Chairman.
I have no changes to the agenda, no disclosures on consent, and 17A, I have emails.
Can I just, for the record, on
sir.
17A, I didn't refer to that, but I do have emails.
Okay, sir. Got it.
Oh, so do I, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Let the record show changes to Commissioner Caldwell and Commissioner Saunders, 17A, 10 demerits.
Good morning. Good morning, both of you.
We've got some.
Mr. Chair, I do have a registered speaker for 17A. You want me to call him at this time?
Okay.
Yeah. Tim, is it Cray? Kragh? This slip came late. There's the possibility he's upstairs. I'm
Is
having,
that appropriate? So we do 17A right now? It's fine?
yeah, summary agenda before we set the agenda.
Yeah.
I don't know how you want to proceed. He could be upstairs.
Okay, we'll wait for him to come down, but let's keep.
We can, so 2A would be when we approve the agenda and the changes. Let's hold that, and we'll go to 2B. This is the March 14th, 2023 BCC meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
County Attorney, are we okay to proceed with our service award?
Yes, we'll just table this 17A until the individual comes down.
Okay. Do we want to just hold the approval of the rest of the agenda, or just 17A?
Yes, let's just wait.
Okay, all right. We're going to move on to employee awards and recognitions. Item 3A2A was continued from the March 20th, 2023 BCC meeting. This is a 25-year award to Jeannie Marcella, Transportation Management Services Administrative Support Specialist 2.
So Jeannie, we'd like to know where you were 2 weeks ago. We need a full report. Yeah. You know, in the Air Force, we call 25 years colonel. There you go. Congratulations.
Gene, pleasure.
Congratulations. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thanks for your service.
No?
No.
Let's not break up the awards, so let's go with
That was
everything.
our only award. We're
Okay.
going to move on to
Okay.
proclamations. Okay. Item 4A is a proclamation recognizing Sunlight Home of Collier County to be accepted by representatives of Sunlight Home.
This is a good outfit.
You're good.
He's gonna move you. Up. Ladies, one of you like to say a few words? Oh, I thought you at the podium. Yeah.
I'm Diane Zingali. On behalf of the Board of Directors and staff, I would like to thank the Collier County Board of Commissioners for recognizing Sunlight Home for its work in helping underprivileged moms and babies find their way in a difficult and dark time in their lives. We provide them with a safe home and a ray of hope for their future. Sunlight Home has provided a shelter in the storm for these women and girls for the past 29 years. We look forward to continuing our work in Collier County, and thank you again for the recognition.
Thanks, Luke. I just want to say it's another great organization in the community that sometimes people don't know much about because you visit the beaches, this is paradise, everything's great, but, we have the same challenges in our community that they have anywhere else. And I know I recently visited and highlighted you in my newsletter. I know several of the other commissioners did as well. Thank you so much. Your organization is just magnificent. We're so lucky to have you in the community. Thank you.
Commissioners, we're going to hop back to 2A. Our speaker waived and
Yes.
is not going to be.
He was here in support.
Okay.
So item 2A is the approval of today's regular consent and summary agenda as amended.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Item 4B is a proclamation recognizing the Bargain Basket Thrift Store as recipient of the Waste Reduction Awards Program for contributing to the greater good of Collier County by advocating the reduce, reuse, recycle message, thereby helping to prolong the usable life of the Collier County landfill, to be accepted by Samantha Arago and Bill Johning, and represented by Jonathan Bartos from our Solid and Hazardous Waste Management Division. Congratulations.
Congratulations. All right. How about you take that? And you share on all those. Good seeing you again. Thanks. Did you want to say anything, or you don't have to? Thanks.
Item 4C is a proclamation designating April 9th through 15th, 2023 as National Public Safety Telecommunications Week, to be accepted by Sheriff Kevin Rambosk, Chief Greg Smith, Manager Amy Tuff, and several 911 Collier County telecommunicators.
Woo.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Sir. Thank you for what you do. Sir. Oh, there. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Sheriff, did you want to say anything, sir? All right.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, staff. Thank you very much for recognizing this upcoming week as Telecommunicators Week. As you know, they are the first emergency responders that intake calls, provide information to fire, rescue, EMS, and law enforcement to get the best, quickest response. And they actually participate in saving lives. So I'd like to recognize them for the great work that they do for Collier County. And thank you again for recognizing them this week.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
4D is a proclamation designating April 2023 as Water Conservation Month in Collier County, to be accepted by Howard Brogdon, Water Division Director.
They abandoned you? Come on, get up here, yeah.
No, he's not alone anymore.
You're gonna leave him up here alone, right?
All by himself. Thank you. Morning.
Did y'all want to say anything, sir? Okay, all right, thank you.
Commissioners, if we could get a motion to approve the proclamations, please.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, accepted unanimously.
Item 5A is Artist of the Month. Chair, would you like me to read? Or do you-
Sure, yeah, you go ahead.
Okay. We are honoring several talented Collier County students as our April Artist of the Month. These students are winners.
Wait a second, wait a second. Do we have come on up here. Let's say that we have some of our artists up here. Come on up front. Come on, we want to see who you are and recognize your talent. Okay, I didn't think there were that many. Everybody go back. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Somebody pointed to 2 people. Come on up front here and face the crowd so we can see the talent that we have here in our county. Commissioner McDaniel just did color by numbers when he was a kid. That was it. This is the real thing. This is actual art.
Had to be lines.
That's right. Right, County Manager, go ahead.
These students are the winners for the 2024 Keep Collier Beautiful Calendar Contest. Here to tell us about Keep Collier Beautiful is President Larry Berg.
Hey.
Thank you, Commissioners. Since 1996, Keep Collier Beautiful has been working with and catalyst with businesses, government leaders, and professional associations to organize education and outreach projects that touch our children. Through their efforts, hundreds of thousands of hours have been spent removing litter and debris from our precious waterways within the county. One of my favorite ways that we have engaged children in our environment is through their art. For over 2 decades, Keep Collier Beautiful, in collaboration with the Collier County Solid Waste Hazardous Management Division, has been giving presentations on protecting our environment right here in our schools and asking our children to submit art projects for inclusion in the annual art contest. All levels of students from kindergarten through high school are included, and we make sure every voice is heard. Let me tell you, this year, 1,000 pieces have been entered into the contest. So biggest event we had in the history of Keep Collier Beautiful. And we had volunteers, had a very difficult task to break it down to 14 winners and 12 runner-ups. I would just like to applaud all the art teachers who have incorporated this into their curriculum and all the dedicated students that cared enough about our environment to submit their artwork. Additionally, the students will be receiving a framed copy of their artwork, a certificate of appreciation, and they get a gift card to spend this summer. So we'd like to thank everybody for participating, and as you see by the artwork that's on the walls, everybody did an outstanding job, so thank you.
Okay, all right. I just want to say something before business of the month is going to be next. I just wanted to say something about the proclamations and the awards that we give. Those of you that are on social media, Maria, who takes our photos, her and her office will put all these online, and you'll see them on Facebook later today. And it always disappoints me when, and it's only one or two citizens, they'll put like an angry face, and then they'll say, oh, it's great that, you spend 30 minutes giving out awards, but what are you doing about affordable housing and red tide and construction? Get to the business of the county. This is the business of the county. Those folks that accepted a water award, that's not just a frame and a piece of paper. That's effort. That's work. These are incredible students that are going to be sitting up here one day when we give out, other awards and proclamations. The Sunlight Home, that is the business of the county. So those one or two people sitting on their couch telling us, what we need to be doing at the county, these are folks that are doing it. So these aren't fake awards and $2 frames. This is a thank you for a lot of hard work. And so I applaud all of you.
Item 5B is presentation of the Collier County Business of the Month for April 2023 to Galt Insurance Group. The award will be accepted by Andrea Galt, Marketing and PR Director, and Sarah Barcarolo, Director of Human Resources. Also attending are Michael Dalby, President and CEO, and Bethany Sawyer, Vice President of Membership and Investors, the Greater Naples Chamber of Commerce.
Congratulations. Thank you. Congratulations.
Who's Galt? Which one's Galt? So it's what a coincidence. Your name, the last name is the same as the insurance company. I mean, how does that happen? Wow. You're welcome to tell us a little bit about your company from the podium if you'd like. Mr. Miller, if we've got people up in the, just to let people know their seats down here now, if there are people there, we can get word to them. Okay, yeah, they can come on down.
Move this down. All right, good morning. Thank you so much. This award actually makes all the hard work worth it. So I'm up here for my husband. My husband, Christian Galt, actually founded Galt Insurance Group about some 20 years ago in Naples. And now we work and we've grown into a large team of agents, and we write insurance in 33 states. So our corporate office is located on Fifth Ave, right down the street, and we've seen so many changes and earn the ability to protect our beautiful area and keep the commerce strong. So we appreciate all of you. Galt Insurance offers commercial insurance for all the business owners and continues to expand our operations by providing the best training. Our specialty will always be built on homeowners insurance and auto insurance, as it was in the beginning. And long story short, we promise to continue to learn, to educate, and improve your experiences, one client at a time. We thank you, and it's been an honor serving Naples families and businesses. Thank you. And
Where's Mr. Galt? He's home warming his bed, and you're here doing the heavy lifting? Is he? Is he?
And as the HR director, I just wanted to echo Andrea's comments by saying we have a team of 26 of which are born and raised in Southwest Florida. So we like to retain the talent that Southwest Florida has created over these past few decades, myself included. And thank you very much for being recognized.
Thank you. Thank you.
Item 5C is presentation of the 2022 Drinking Water Plant Operations Excellence Award in recognition of outstanding treatment plant operation, maintenance, and compliance for the Collier County North Regional Water Treatment Plant from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, to be accepted by Howard Brogdon, Division Director, Water Public Utilities Department. Congratulations.
Somebody bring it. Congratulations. Did somebody bring an award, or did you all bring something? I don't have the plaque. Is it a big trophy? I didn't. Yeah, that's right. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Commissioners, this brings us to the first of our time certains. This is item 5C, recommendation to direct the clerk of the circuit court, item 10C, which is a recommendation to direct the clerk of the circuit court to timely transfer $30 million to the state of Florida for the State Veterans Nursing Home Project. This item is brought to the agenda by Commissioner Saunders.
Okay, Commissioner Saunders, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is obviously a big step for the county, sending a $30 million check to the state, or a wire transfer, I guess is the way it would work. It really is a big deal, and the clerk of courts has raised some interesting questions. I know she is still evaluating this, obviously to make sure that the public interest and the taxpayers of Collier County are protected, and hopefully we will provide her the cover she needs to send the funds to Tallahassee on or before May 1st. I'd like to, and again, this is a big deal for the commission to make this determination, so I'd ask John Mullins if he would come forward with the permission of the board to kind of explain why we need to send this money up today on a project that might be a couple years away in terms of actual construction, and I think the clerk also needs to hear this type of information. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mullins?
For the record, John Mullins, your Director of Communications, Government, and Public Affairs. And if you recall, last month, I displayed a ranking sheet before you on the visualizer. The font was rather small. My spectacles were on top of my head instead of in front of my eyes, so it was even hard for me to read. But I'm here to explain better how that ranking system works and to show you the benefit of having money in hand as a state applicant as opposed to not having money in hand as a state applicant when applying to the construction grant program. And this is very brief, and I will try to keep it pretty high level. Now, all applications to the construction grant program are ranked by the Secretary of the VA once they're received based on three main criteria: the specific criteria in the Code of Federal Regulations, the application date, and I'll revisit that here shortly, and certified state matching funds up to 35%. Now, this ranking culminates in the annual priority list, which is what I showed you last month. Now, the Secretary will produce this list, prioritizing all the applications received on or before April 15th, and that will also come into play here in just a few moments. Now, via the stewardship of our Senate President, FDVA anticipates receiving $500,000 from the legislature for the preliminary design and engineering work, and plans to submit those materials for VA review later this year, well before the April 15th deadline for the next cycle. Now, the application will also certify at that time that the state already has its matching funds in hand and unencumbered, and that's an important distinction. Now, even if you have state funds in hand or not, there are 8 priority group lists that kind of set those in order. Priority Group 1 applies to the states that have demonstrated that they have the matching funds available for the project. And on the ranking sheet that I showed you last month, there were 31 projects in Priority Group 1 totaling $667 million. Those were all states that had money in hand. Priority Groups 2 through 8 applied to all other grant applications. And Florida's pending request for a new facility in West Florida was in Priority Group 4. of that list. Now, even if you have your funds in hand and you are placed in priority group 1, there are still 7 sub-priorities. And the reason why I'm bringing up this minutia is because there have been several questions as to, okay, you're giving $30 million to the state, you're providing land, why are we not number 1 in the nation? Well, that's because new construction is not at the top of the list for the VA. At the top of that list is sub-priority 1 of priority 1, which is remedies for cited life safety issues. This is fixing problems in existing facilities to take the threat of imminent harm away. Now, 1.2, which is the second level, are states without a construction grant for a state home. There has not been anyone in that category for the last few years. The last state was Wyoming. They were the last of the 50 states to receive a grant, and that category is now clear. 1.3 is where the state of Florida would be if they can certify that they have their state funds in hand, because they are a state of a defined great need, which is an unmet need of 2,000 or more beds. So that's where Florida would be, pretty close to the top. Now, when you look at great need, because there are other states that may qualify in this category, you'll see that Florida, of course, is in the lead with a deficit of over 2,900 beds for veterans. Texas, though, is right on our heels. They are also categorized as great need, and California is on the cusp of entering that category. Now, you may ask, what happens if Florida and Texas apply in the same cycle? If that happens, it is actually based upon who applied first, which again demonstrates the need to get the application in as early as possible. Now, this is the list that I showed you last month, and on it I demonstrated that if you had been in priority group 2, and in our case, priority group 4, ranked number 32, if you had had state money in hand during that cycle, you would have jumped all the way up to number 3, because if you look at the top of that list, there were only 2 projects ahead of you at 1.1, which were remedies for life safety in both cases. And then you'll notice the absence of 1.2, states without a grant, because that doesn't exist anymore. And then 1.3, states with great need. No one applied in that cycle that had great need that demonstrated that they had funds in hand. Had Florida had funds in hand, they would have been right there. And I hope that sheds a little bit more light on the need of having state fund in hand early as possible to facilitate the grant application going in, receiving federal feedback in plenty of time to make any revisions before the April 15th deadline.
Thank you, Mr. Mullins. Commissioners, the reason I wanted this to be clarified is it's important for the clerk to understand why this money needs to be sent to Tallahassee so quickly, because we have a project that could be under construction in 2 years, it could be under construction in 3 years. We just don't know the ultimate timing. And so the question is, well, why would we send $30 million to Tallahassee to sit in an escrow account, an interest-bearing account, when we don't have a project that has yet been funded by the federal government? And that explains why this May 1st deadline is critically important to get those funds there. And so we're going to have to work with the clerk over the next couple of weeks to make sure she has the comfort to wire transfer those funds, because the state does charge a fee for handling those funds. It's 0.2%, so it's a statutory fee. And of course, the clerk has raised a good question: why should we pay the state 0.2% fee on the funds that they're holding when we could hold them here at no cost? Well, the answer is, if we want this project to move forward and receive the $60 to $70 million in federal funding for this project, then we have to send those funds up the way that's been described. That way, their funds are totally unfettered. They're in hand and ready to be deployed. Now, the good news is that those funds, if there is no project, the contract with the state is that they return all those funds with interest, minus the 0.2% handling fee, to us immediately. There's no delay in that. The other good news is that before the state can even disperse those funds, the Florida legislature has to approve that. So we have a couple protections there. We just need to make sure the clerk is comfortable with those funds being forwarded up. So, Mr. Chairman, my motion would be, I don't know if we have any registered speakers.
No, sir.
My motion would be then to approve the moving forward with the project and give direction or whatever the proper word would be to the clerk. I see she's smiling back there. Request the clerk to send those funds to Tallahassee before May 1st, 2023.
Second.
Third.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. I wanted to make a comment. I want to thank Commissioner Saunders, for his leadership. This is obviously a location in his district, but it affects the entire county. But and really all the commissioners have had efforts in getting this done, but it's really been with Commissioner Saunders' leadership, and nobody knows Tallahassee better than Commissioner Saunders. So when we go up there, it's great that we get our foot in the door a little bit quicker because they really have a respect for him as well. And I want to thank Mr. Mullins. When we just went up there to Tallahassee, it was obvious that this was on everybody's short list to not only talk with all of us, and they were impressed that all 5 of us came up, and it was primarily for the VA nursing home. But thank you for your leadership. And to Ms. Kenzel, her job is oversight. So everybody's doing their job here to make sure everything's done properly. But, I will just add anecdotally, the Governor DeSantis's lead person for the Veterans Nursing Home is General Hartzell, who's a retired Marine Corps 2-star. And one of the things he said to me offline is what jumps you on that list is a couple of things: the money, the land. But the money shows commitment. It shows our sense of urgency. It shows that we're serious and moving forward. And one of the reasons why a lot of counties haven't taken the lead the way we do is maybe they don't have the funds or they're a bit tentative. But it's been our strong commitment and the strong commitment of the leadership of the county that is moving this forward, and we'll get the Veterans Nursing Home sooner than later, and certainly sooner than maybe we would have had it 10 years ago. I mean, maybe when it wasn't even on the board. So thank you to all, and everybody's doing their job here, and we're going to make sure that we get the best bang for our buck. And you certainly can see the need here in Florida, long overdue. So thank you to everybody, and passes unanimously. Thank you.
Commissioners, that brings us to item 7, public comments on general topics not on the current or future agenda.
I have 2 registered speakers for this item, Jesse Karen and Bill D'Antono. I don't know if I'm saying that right. You come up to the microphones, gentlemen. If you'll come up one to each microphone. Jesse, you would be first, followed by Bill. If you'll begin by stating your name, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. Captain Jesse Karen, Collier business owner for 18 and a half years and president of the Collier County Guides Association. I wanted to come to you today because we have an issue. There's about 100 or more users operating their businesses inside the county boat parks that do not have the necessary permits or insurance to do so. So instead of enforcing permits, there are considerations that the 200-plus properly licensed businesses should be cut down, thus putting some out of business. Right now, there are no means or methods for enforcing the permits that businesses are required to have. I think it would make more sense to try and figure out a way to enforce those permits to reduce the numbers in the parks rather than punish the businesses that are in compliance. There are park rangers, but unfortunately, they have told me they have no enforcement abilities whatsoever when it comes to the permits. Calls have been made to Parks and Rec on multiple occasions to complain about specific non-permitted operators using the park. And they told me flat out that they have no way to enforce it. None. Zero. That I should call code enforcement. We tried code enforcement several times, but it seems like unless there is an address with a sustained violation, it's very difficult. They too have no means or methods for enforcing the violations. So one of the problems is the permits can be placed on your truck, your trailer, or your boat. So it's very hard for any authority to try and understand who is in compliance and who is not. If all the permits were placed on the vessels, it would be easy for any authority to look exactly at the vessel, see who has the permit, who doesn't, who has customers getting on and off the boat and doesn't have that permit, okay? So right now, I'm told that when someone is operating in the park without a permit, they are trespassing. There's hundreds. I mean, if not 100, there's 110, but there's a lot. Just in Goodland alone, we have probably 25. So it's kind of scary when there's talk about closing some of the businesses to reduce the volume in the parks. You know, we produce millions of dollars in this economy through sales tax and dollars that our visitors spend while we're here. We surveyed our customers over the last 2.5 years and asked them if they would still come if they did not have the tours available that they have. 77% of our visitors said they would not return here if they did not have these tours to take. And that was pretty shocking to me. That's kind of scary. So I ask that you please continue to help our tourism thrive and our businesses grow while we all try and find solutions to the problems. But I think one of the biggest problems is figuring out an enforcement method. Thank you.
I'm gonna just take advantage of you being here. So and I thank you for being here. And the issue isn't lost on us, but when I hear very specific things like we have no way to enforce permits, I mean, I think we do have a way, so we might be doing it poorly. But my question to you would be, if numerous calls were made to Parks and Rec and all this, so do you have the names of the people? Because I want to know who's giving you that bad information, saying, "Wow, I'm a park ranger and I'm just out here, watching cars and dolphins." I mean, we're using taxpayer dollars to have and checking permits isn't like launching the space shuttle. It actually is possible to check permits. So do you have the names of the people so we can actually go to the, one of the things we're trying to do at the county staff here is find where our dead wood is. People that say, yeah, not my job. Yeah, I'm Collier County Commissioner or whatnot. Do you have any of those details that you can share with us to help us, start, or share those with, Mr. Rodriguez or Tanya? We have the right leadership here, and part of a citizen speaking at the podium is to help us do a better job as a county. Everything you just said actually is doable. So I'm flabbergasted if we're letting trucks sort of go in and go first come, first serve, and then when you show up with a permit, it's like park's full of a bunch of illegal people, but nothing we can do. I mean, that's not true. And if that's what's happening out there, then we want to take aggressive action. So don't leave here this morning without sharing. Tanya in the back, raise your hand, Tanya. I want you to talk with her, and I want to get as much info from you as we have to the subject matter expert. Okay? Because we share this issue and we've been fighting it. And exactly what you said is what we don't want to have happen. People with permits are blocked out because the park's full of people who don't have. And, my understanding, and it's not an understanding, we have been working hard. We didn't have a bunch of rangers out there years ago, and we do now. If all they're doing is saying they can't do anything, then that's a problem. So I appreciate you coming here and bringing this to our attention. Please share that info, and let's figure out what we're doing wrong.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
My other speakers, Bill, is it D'Antonio?
D'Antuono.
D'Antuono. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Good morning, Council. My name is Bill D'Antuono. I run offshore Naples fishing charters. I've been running out of Bayview Boat Ramp since 2017. Now we have formed the Collier County Guides Association, and I'm chairman of the board on that. Representing hundreds of people who are not here, maybe even thousands that are guides and just citizens. One issue that I'm just talking about, one issue today, going to try to keep it as short as possible. There's a major parking issue at Bayview right now. There's one construction company that's there before the sun comes up, and there's about 40 cars that show up every day, take up every single parking spot. They're double parking in trailer spots. There's a pontoon that picks them up, and the pontoon doesn't have a pass. The sticker's not on the pontoon, and anyone that knows charter fishing, it's a 6-pack license, or you have to have a certified vessel. This is not a certified vessel, and they're loading this boat with over 20 people in it, and it's a hazard on the water. They're taking up every single spot during the week at Bayview. I mean, it's just, you want to talk about Wild West. That's a showdown at sunset.
That's my term. Wild West show.
We talked about that.
I know.
So I mean, at the least, they should be bussed in, but they don't have the pass to even pick people up. And if they were going to have a pass and do it right, they would need at least 5 or 6 boats to accommodate for all those people. I mean, this is worse than all the jet skis stuff, the guides. These are not guides. This is a construction company that's doing work on Key Waden, I think, after the hurricane or whatever they're building out there. But, I mean, I have a picture, and I could show you, of 30 guys standing on the dock in the morning.
Someone sent us that picture, at least me, maybe all of us, like
I sent it in
day or
to
two.
Waltz.
Okay, yeah, we all got it.
Guides and ecotourism is the backbone of this county's history, and it's been around longer than anyone in this room has been alive. So we should try to keep that tradition alive. And you know what's been going on the last 2 years here. You guys have been trying to move it forward so everyone can have a peace of mind and have a good experience at the boat ramp. And I just wanted to bring that issue to light because it's really a problem down there in the morning.
Got it. Mr. Rodriguez, are we taking action? Did you see that photo? I mean, it's pretty clear.
Good morning, Commissioners. No, I did not see that photo. So.
Okay, we'll talk about it today, and we need a better solution. It's completely obvious. So it was just brought to our attention, but it's been a problem a long time apparently. So I appreciate you coming in and telling us. We got everything we need. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, that was all my registered speakers for item 7.
Okay.
Commissioners, that moves us to item 9A and its companion item, item 10A. Now, item 9A is a recommendation to consider adopting an ordinance establishing the Collier County Health Freedom Bill of Rights, and its companion item, 10A, is a recommendation to adopt a health freedom resolution. Item 10A is sponsored by Commissioner Hall.
I'm going to give a little opening and a little setup here, and then I don't know if Commissioner Hall has something that he wants to say, but first thing I want to say is we're all citizens up here, so this isn't some sort of magic court up here, and we're not part of the population. We're all citizens, and we understand the issues at hand here in the county. I'm really thankful that we've got people from both sides of the issue. We've gotten emails from people this week and last week saying, "How could you even hear something like this on the agenda?" The way it works in America is citizens put things on our agenda. I said this 2 weeks ago. And so it's not a matter of us sitting up here saying, well, we don't want to hear that. I mean, if it's something that's important to citizens, it gets vetted and it gets on the agenda. I said in my newsletter this week, but I just want to talk about contacting county commissioners. So we got hundreds of emails, and citizen voice is very important, whether you're here in person or not. But let me just separate a little rumor from fact. Getting 200 emails from a partisan group that is a cut and paste email that doesn't have the person's email and the return address, it says no reply, something.org. I don't know about commissioners here, but I think I speak for all of us. I want to talk to my constituents. So those of you that sent us hundreds of emails, I mean, I'll just speak for me. I want to be able to reply back to you. I also want to hear your personal comments, not some email that one person typed and then they just spit in 300 email addresses and sent it to me. And I've said that before. It does show us that 300 people hate or like what we were about to talk about. But nobody up here keeps score. This isn't the Super Bowl. We don't sit here and go, well, we got 800 fours and 200 against, so we better vote for. So for those of you that took the time to send us personal notes and say, this is the reason why I love the resolution in the ordinance, or this is the reason why I hate it, and then outline something, that's the kind of at least professional, conversation that I really respect. Not just sort of blowing up our inbox with a bunch of cut and paste emails and then no ability to even reply to the person because we're locked out. Also, I got emails from people this week that said, boy, I really would have, I can't come in person and I would have called in, but Zoom is all full. So that's fake news as well, because Zoom doesn't fill up. If we have 3,000 people on Zoom, then we're going to order pizzas and have breakfast here in the morning because we're going to hear from every citizen. So, if you want us to be, open-minded and honest and have integrity, then I just say to the citizens out there, speak with us with an open mind and also eloquence and do your homework and understand what we're passing. Sending us emails saying, I'm not for something because it does A, B, C, D, and E, when it does none of those things. I mean, I have no idea what side any of us are going to be on here, but this resolution doesn't ban a whole bunch of things. It gives choice. At least that's what the people on the pro side are going to say, and the people on the negative side are going to say something else. But a lot of the emails that filled our inbox summarized what was happening in here, and 90% of it actually wasn't true at all. And so that makes things difficult. So misinformation certainly is what makes our job a lot harder. But I would say to both sides today, let's all be professional, just like we were 2 weeks ago. Very impressive how people on both sides, we had a very open and honest conversation, regardless of what side that you're on. We're not on Oprah, so we don't need cheers and screams and howls and all that. Let's have an actual conversation like we did. But for those of you that were able to make it here, attendance isn't mandatory. We know you're speaking on both sides for large groups of people, but let's continue the professional discussion that we had. And for those that might be watching or listening, or if you take our message back, we all welcome emails and welcome messaging, and I'm not here to tell anybody how to contact us, but I'm here to give some advice on what works the best or what helps us the best, and it's those type of things. Talk to us, and we want to talk with you, and it's not about how much you can blow up somebody's inbox with an email that somebody else typed and not even give us the chance to be able to reply back and ask questions and things like that. But having said that, Commissioner Hall, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I brought this ordinance and the next resolution up to the public because this was the whole reason why I ran for this job. I stood in front of everybody 2 years ago, and I said, when the mandates came down in this county from the federal government, forcing us to do this and forcing us to do that, shutting our businesses down, forcing people to lose their jobs that they'd been there for years and had seniority because they wouldn't get a certain shot that was mandated on them. That was just a violation, just a violation of personal liberty like I'd never seen in my life in this country. And so I brought the ordinance forth. The ordinance is a county ordinance that basically follows state law, that we want to make an ordinance in Collier County in case anything changes at the state law. We have liberties protected in Collier County. That's what the ordinance is for. Following the ordinance as the next agenda item is the resolution. The resolution is not law. The resolution is not anything that's binding, but it's a resolve from the county commissioners, if we approve this, that says as a commission board, we're going to have your back as the people. We're going to protect and secure your personal liberty. I've had emails coming to me right and left saying, how can you even consider this ridiculous topic? I can tell you why I can consider this ridiculous topic. Because if you want to wear a mask, you're so welcome to. If you want to get a vaccine, you get you one and do it proudly. If you want to close your business, you do that. You're free to do that. That's your choice. But if you don't, we want to give you the choice not to wear one, not to get a shot that hasn't been proved. You can argue with me all day long, but I got vaccinated when I was a young child for polio. Never had polio. That was a true vaccine. The people that I know that have vaccines have had COVID. They have had it more than once. To me, that's not a vaccine. You can argue with me all day long. But for me to know that and not to choose to do that or not to be mandated is important to me. So the role of a government official is to protect and secure the liberties of the people. You say, well, what about my freedom? If you're running around loose, you're a public threat. No. That's the freedom that I have. You're free to stay home. You're free to wear a mask. You're free to do whatever. But when your freedom infringes on my freedom to make my choice, that's an infringement on liberty. There's a difference between liberty and freedom. Anytime freedom is infringed on another person's freedom, that's a violation of liberty. And I want to make that clear. That's what this resolution is about, is a resolve for us in Collier County to make those choices. We made some mistakes in the past. I said that in the last meeting, and I want to make sure that Collier County doesn't make those same mistakes. Our rights are given to us by God. I've had emails saying, document that. I wanted to send them a picture of a $100 bill with "In God We Trust" and say, there's your documentation, but I didn't. But our rights are given to us by God, and our job is to protect and secure those liberties that are given to us. And that's what we hope to do with this ordinance and this resolution.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Miller.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What's next? We're going to start with public comment.
Yeah, we have 51 registered speakers here and on Zoom, sir.
On Zoom? Zoom's not full?
No, sir.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
By the way, I'll check, but there is a cap, but I think it's around 500.
It's about 500. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Your first speaker, I'm going to remind the speakers, please queue up and use both podiums. I'll also remind you, please, I know you're limited on your time, but don't talk too fast. The court reporter is taking down every word. We'll begin with Pastor Anthony Thomas, and he'll be followed by Scott Riley.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners, today. I want to share very quickly, and then I'm going to lead us in a time of prayer. The prophet Daniel, one of the great prince of prophets, looked thousands of years ahead in his prophetic scope, and he saw a dark and an evil day. Yet he gives us a great promise of hope in this passage, and he said that those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament, and those who turn many to righteousness like stars forever and ever. Let us pray. Father, we thank you today for the power of your Spirit that's here right now. And God, you said when the enemy comes in like a flood, the Lord will rise up a standard against them. And God, we know that you've put leaders in office, and those leaders one day will have to stand before the King of Kings and Lord of Lords and give an account of their leadership. As your word says, who much is given, much is required. And God, I'm asking right now, Lord, as we've seen a time and an age where God, lies and deception and darkness has invaded our country. God, I thank you for Naples, Florida, and for Collier County, that God, there are leaders that are willing to stand in the midst of this flood of evil. God, I'm asking today that you would strengthen the county commissioners here to make the right decision. Let them shine like the stars, as you said, and let them be that standard that stands against wickedness. God, we know that generations will look back to this time. And God, they will bless those who stood, and God, they will curse those if they fainted in the day of adversity. God, let it be said of our leaders today that they stood and they governed with righteousness and goodness and protected the people. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. God bless you.
Your next speaker is Scott Kiley. He will be he's going to be followed by Ann Vandersteel. Mr. Kiley's been seated additional time from Marcy Davis, is it Pritzy? She is here. Also additional time from Jill Kiley. Oh, there she is. Scott will have a total of 9 minutes.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Scott Kiley, resident of Marco Island, and a member of the COVID Tyranny Task Force. Commissioner Hall, I'm going to expand on your eloquent words this morning. Let's bring clarity to 3 questions. Why do we need a resolution? Why do we need an ordinance? And why can we not merge the two together? Starting with, why do we need a resolution? Let's walk through the 9 major points of the resolution, and as we go, I will justify the need for every point.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
We're voting, if I'm not mistaken, we're here in the ordinance first. So we got to stay on the ordinance right now, if I'm not mistaken. As a point of order.
We're hearing both items together, otherwise you'll hear them twice.
Okay. I'm sorry, Scott. Forgive me. I just wanted to make sure we were on task.
Thank you, sir. Okay, now and therefore, be it resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of Collier County, Florida, that, number 1, the first item, right to no medical mandates. Gentlemen, this is justified because informed consent was denied. Testing transparency does not exist. Any mandate under these circumstances is giving blind trust to Big Pharma that has not earned our trust. Further, the use of a biological agent on civilians without informed consent is considered human criminal experimentation and is in violation of international laws that protect human rights, including the Nuremberg Code and the Geneva Convention. Last, hospitals, doctors, and pharma companies often have no liability and huge financial incentives to push new medications. This is an unacceptable conflict with mandating anything and in violation of our right to not be harmed, injured, or deprived of life without due process of law under the 5th and 14th Amendments. Commissioners, it is our resolve to never allow this again by working toward no medical mandates. Item number 2, the right to no discrimination. If you did not get vaccinated, it turns out you were smart in not putting yourself at risk for heart complications, autoimmune disease, and even sudden death. But today, if you need a medical procedure, should you be denied that procedure because you did not get injected? If we allow this nonsense to continue, they can mandate any treatment or procedure and humanity will be forced to comply. Commissioners, we must resolve to preserve freedom of choice without discrimination. Number 3, informed consent without interference. Doctors have a personal history with their patients. Back up. The Nuremberg Code foundational element is informed consent. What do we demand for ourselves and our children? Of course, informed consent is a must-have under all circumstances. It is unconscionable that any doctor would ever deny informed consent to their patient. We resolve to assure our citizens will always receive informed consent. Point number 4, the right of personalized care. Doctors have a personal history with their patients. They can weigh out all the circumstances and make a personalized health care plan in the best interest of the patient, not the hospital's bottom line. We resolve to never be subjected to anything less than personalized care created between the patient and the doctor. Number 5, the right to exclude third-party interference from the WHO. We stand united against the WHO's attempt to subvert or supersede our constitutional rights, including usurping our bodily sovereignty and healthcare freedom. Number 6, the right to not be refused care based on vaccine history. The HIPAA privacy rules establishes national standards to protect individuals' medical records and other individually identifiable health information. Commissioners, we resolve to guard and protect medical privacy. Number 7, the right of free movement. Health vaccine passports must be prohibited in Collier County. Vaccine passports are unconstitutional and an invasion of privacy. Of course, we do not want to live in a society where vaccine passports dictate our level of personal freedom. Number 8, the right to a medical advocate. Medical advocates allow a check and balance to hospital staff that may get it wrong. Medical advocates know your health circumstances that can impact treatment decisions. Medical advocates know your end-of-life wishes. It is our resolve to assure all Collier County citizens have the right to a medical advocate. Last, point number 9, the right to forego unlawful quarantine. Commissioners, in 2020, for the first time in history, we improperly and unlawfully quarantined the healthy, including children. This costs lives. It prolonged the pandemic. It crushed the economy. It served no purpose. It caused irreparable social and developmental harm to children. And we must never allow this to happen again. In closing on the question of why we need a resolution, so much of what was recommended by our health officials over the past 3 years was incorrect and harmful. New pandemics will come, and we must do better. The resolution highlights areas of concern and areas needing improvement. We will use the resolution to educate citizens. There's a lot of educating to do. We will rally. We will unite support within our county. We will teach our Constitution and change state statutes that desperately need improvement. The second question, why do we need an ordinance? Commissioners, we have Florida state statutes that provide some level of protection for citizens of Collier. These cumbersome, hard to read, contradicting statutes, they get passed, and our Collier citizens are not aware of the benefits. By adopting our own Health Freedom Bill of Rights ordinance that reflects these state statutes, we can better educate and create awareness of the benefits to our Collier County citizens. Examples: we will break out the most pertinent beneficial elements in long, lengthy statutes, and we will make it easy for citizens to understand. We'll teach citizens their options to opt their children out of medical mandates, and we'll show them how to complete the process. We'll inform citizens of their rights against discrimination in the workplace. We will shine a light on areas of state statutes that pose a threat to our health safety, and we will mobilize citizens to get active and create the change in Tallahassee. We will use all of this to make sure we are educated and prepared to fight back against future government overreach, and it sure is coming. Our ordinance also rejects any authority from the WHO or any other international body. It is critical that we spread this word around the state and the country as the globalists are coming for our freedom. Collier County will be the beacon of freedom in all of Florida. And finally, the last question: why can we not combine the ordinance, and the resolution? So, Commissioners, the resolution lists items that are preempted by state statutes. In Collier County, we cannot preempt or supersede state statutes or state laws. Because of this, the two documents cannot be combined. The ordinance is legally binding and reflects state statutes. The resolution acknowledges areas needing improvement and are resolved to do better. Commissioners, thank you for your time. I hope this brings clarity to the need for both. Please protect our citizens and pass the Health Freedom Resolution and the Health Freedom Bill of Rights Ordinance. Thank you.
I just would remind the other speakers, we have 15. Thank you, sir. If somebody has already said what you have said, there's no shame in raising your hand and saying, I deferred my time. I'm not encouraging that. We want to hear from everybody, but if you're just going to repeat what the next person said and you don't feel like you need to do that, then you can just let Mr. Miller know I waive my time. Ma'am?
Your next speaker is Ann Vandersteel. She'll be followed by Josh Yoder. Ms. Vandersteel's been seated additional time from Carol DiPaolo. Yeah, back there. And Mindy Marcosi. She will have a total of 9 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Honorable Collier County Commissioners, concerned fellow Americans, and to all my colleagues who are called to make sure that the truth is shared like a mantra far and wide. It is my honor to stand before you all today to discuss the importance of the Collier Health Freedom Resolution and the Collier Health Freedom Bill of Rights Ordinance. And in order to make this case, I need to detail the current global setting. And let me be clear, we are at war. The last 3 years have made that abundantly clear, from government overreach, violation of our God-given constitutionally protected human rights, and the exposure of the fascist evil of what government would have you believe is constituted in your best interest. The public-private partnerships across the board have all been exposed to be the corruption on steroids, putting profits over people. I am Ann Vandersteel, president and chair of the Zelenko Freedom Foundation. Dr. Vladimir Zelenko, who stood in the breach for humanity early in the COVID-19 pandemic, delivered to the world the Zelenko Protocol of hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and zinc for early treatment and intervention, proving efficacy not only in his practice, but for millions around the world. He also exposed the evil and profiteering taking place with the public-private partnership between the CDC, FDA, and the big pharmaceutical medical industrial complex. 2 years ago, President Trump was made aware of the success of Dr. Zelenko and what he was seeing using the hydroxychloroquine clinically in his practice, and the president brought it to the world during the coronavirus press conference, stating that he had a good feeling about hydroxychloroquine. Dr. Fauci's immediate response was to refute that narrative, declaring that a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial was needed to be done. What he failed to mention was that the NIH studied chloroquine back in 2005 as a potent inhibitor of the SARS-CoV virus. In a study published by that NIH in 2005, it was reported that chloroquine had strong antiviral effects on SARS-CoV-2 infections. Those inhibitory effects were observed when the cells were treated with the drug either before or after exposure to the virus, suggesting both a prophylactic and therapeutic advantage. In addition, chloroquine had also appeared to interfere with the virus's ability to bind to the ACE2 receptors, thus resulting in the inhibition of infection and spread of SARS-CoV at clinically admissible concentrations. The cover-up of the deadly nature of these COVID shots, which were ushered in under Operation Warp Speed, has been made possible by the mainstream media, government agency employees, your elected officials, and, of course, the big pharmaceutical medical industrial complex. Let's talk about the toxic nature of graphene oxide, a substance present in these shots that Karen Kingston called out early in July of 21. I know because I was with her in Branson, Missouri, when I found her one night at 2 a.m. poring over Pfizer documents when she found that deadly graphene oxide was present in the shots, and while explaining what it meant, she broke down in tears. She knew it was what we would call a bioweapon then, and what the ultimate result would be as evidenced by the data, lies, and obfuscation of the adverse events reports. We know it to be true today. Several independent studies conducted by doctors and scientists have now confirmed that graphene oxide is in fact present in these vaccines. But the manufacturers, medicine regulators, and so-called fact checkers have refuted these claims, most likely due to the known toxic effects it has on the body. For instance, Reuters, which essentially supplies the news to the entire Western world without most people realizing it, stated in a fact-checking article published back in July 23rd of 21 that it is impossible for COVID vaccines to contain graphene oxide because they would either be dark brown or black in color instead of the clear yellowish color they are. But what Reuters fact-checkers failed to mention is that when graphene oxide is combined with other ingredients such as sucrose, a listed ingredient on the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine, it's perfectly possible to produce a clear or yellowish, liquid. I apologize. I'm used to microphones not working so well. Thank you. To further substantiate proof of this, a document published...
I didn't mean to talk lower. I just meant slow down because Miss
Oh.
Lewis here is, she's trying to get every word, and hydrochloride, whatever, takes a
sorry.
couple of key pounds, So we're not going to cut anybody off today.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. To further substantiate proof of this, a document published in February of 2023 by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration by order of the U.S. Federal Court and submitted to the FDA by Pfizer to gain the emergency use authorization confirms it is perfectly possible for toxic graphene oxide to end up in the COVID-19 vaccines due to the manufacturing process. The COVID-19 injections had not completed phase 3 or 4 trials, so could not be fully approved in December of 2020. Instead, they had to be authorized for emergency use only. That is why it's criminal that they extended the EUA to children, considering we were at little risk of suffering anything more than severe or common cold if infected with the alleged SARS-CoV-2 virus. If the federal court judge had not forced the FDA to publish the documents, they wouldn't have seen the light of day for 75 years. Because this is the length of time the FDA actually requested on behalf of Pfizer that they be given to publish the documents under the Freedom of Information Act. We actually owe a debt of gratitude to a group of scientists and medical researchers who sued the FDA to force release of hundreds of thousands of documents related to the EUA of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine. Sadly, one of the most recent documents published by the FDA confirms the use of graphene oxide in the manufacturing process, and the confirmation can actually be found on page 7 in this document, where it clearly states graphene oxide is required to manufacture the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine, thus proving that the unelected bureaucrats of the unconstitutional for-profit agencies who are supposed to protect the public because they are the regulators of safety in testing and manufacturing of medicines, coupled with the mainstream media, fact checkers, and big pharma corporations like Pfizer, have conspired to deliver a faulty product at best and a bioweapon at worst. And they did all of this by lying to all of you. As to be very clear about how serious the collusion is between the fourth estate of government, known as the mainstream media, and their paymasters in big pharma is, Reuters content is used by many news outlets, including CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, New York Times, Washington Post, The Wall Street Journal, And that's just here. Across the pond, you have the BBC, The Guardian, The Times, The Daily Telegraph, The Independent in the UK. So what have we learned? Well, thanks to the DoD, Department of Defense whistleblowers like Colonel Teresa Long, we gained access over a year ago to the gold standard of healthcare trend data. It's called DMED, Department of Medical Epidemiological Database. It proved that in the first 11 months of the mandated COVID shots being administered to our military servicemen and women, there was a 1,100% increase in vaccine adverse events as compared to the previous 24 years. And according to Dr. Thomas Levy, a minimum of 7 million Americans now have heart damage by COVID vaccines. And although there's no way of being certain at this time, Dr. Levy also said it's within the realm of possibly that over 100 million people in America have some degree of heart damage from the injections, not myocarditis, but heart damage that will be detectable with a troponin test. Sadly, the U.S. and its global RICO corporately owned government partners are behind the cover-up. The money being paid to our medical institutions, like Sarasota Memorial Hospital, for instance, a taxpayer-funded community hospital, has clouded the judgments of its medical professionals and staff so much so that their record profits last year also resulted in a record turnout by the community during public comment at the hospital board meetings demanding answers. And of course, cessation of the deadly CDC protocols that resulted in the unnecessary killing of their loved ones. What has been made possible by unconstitutional laws giving liability protection to anyone administering the deadly COVID protocols of the emergency use authorized remdesivir and ventilators has now been made clear that should Governor Ron DeSantis not re-sign that bill into law when it expires in June, all liability will fall upon the medical professional. No more corporate liability shield. So you see, these excuses of I was just following orders defense fades quickly, just as it did during the Nuremberg trials after World War II. What makes the use of EUA remdesivir indefensible is that in 2018 and 2019, the NIH and WHO funded a clinical study in the Democratic Republic of the Congo conducting human trial experiments using remdesivir to treat Ebola, resulting in 53 to 86% fatality. The WHO even declared its lethality, made it null and void. They would never support this.
You need to wrap up, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yet our government, Dr. Anthony Fauci, condoned it and put it forward. This is where we have to draw the line in the sand, ladies and gentlemen. What Commissioner Hall has presented and what you're being presented today with the opportunity to pass a resolution and an ordinance to protect the safety of your constituents is all about the local action having a national impact, something that General Flynn has espoused for decades, in fact. And here in Collier County, you are at the tip of the spear. You have the opportunity to lead the country out of the darkness and prove that we the people can make the best decisions for ourselves, that we the people in fact govern, and that you the commissioners will do the right thing in listening and responding to the people's wishes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Your next speaker is Josh Yoder. He'll be followed by Aaron Olszewski. Mr. Yoder's been seated time from Mary Asger or Alger? Alger, thank you. And George Suet. Am I missing George?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm giving up my time.
Oh, okay, thank you. So Mr. Yoder will have a total of 9 minutes and be followed by Aaron Olszewski.
Thank you. Good morning to the Collier County Commission. I would like to thank all of you for being here today and for listening to these concerns that we believe are so important. It says a lot about your character, and I would love to see more leaders like you across the country. So my name is Josh Yoder. I'm the co-founder and president of U.S. Freedom Flyers. I'm a major airline pilot. I never anticipated that I would be standing here speaking to a county commission as an airline pilot, but back in 2021, we had a devastating occurrence, which was vaccine mandates that came to the airline industry. As pilots, as you know, we are very focused on our health, and we're very reluctant to take medications or anything that could potentially violate our flight physical, harm our health, and therefore harm our careers. The airlines they took a totalitarian stance on October 6th. My airline mandated the vaccine on myself and my colleagues, one of which is sitting over here, another a senior captain at our company. And there was tremendous chaos within the airline industry. I had already been seeing vaccine injuries among some of my friends who had willingly taken the shot earlier in 2021. We stood up in force, first with just a few people, then tens, then hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands across the industry. We stood up and we pushed back for individual liberty and freedom, you know, the thing that we hold most dear in this country. As the year progressed, we provided pushback. The airlines, largely in part, they accepted religious and medical exemptions when they had initially said it was termination, no exemption was going to be allowed. It's because we stood up in force and they knew that they couldn't afford to lose 20 to 25% of their workforce and continue to operate as companies. They didn't do it out of the kindness of their hearts. They did it because we stood together as citizens. That's what it means to be an American. Look at how this country was founded. Normal people who stood up to their government, and they brought forward freedom, and they stood for what they believed in. And we're now experiencing the benefits of that even today. I'd like to tell you a few stories of some of my friends who have been vaccine injured, just to bring, just to highlight this issue. So in the fall of 2021, my friend Cody Flint, he was an agricultural pilot out of Mississippi. You know, he did what the FAA told him to do. They said the vaccine was safe and effective, even though they did no safety studies whatsoever. Cody Flint, he gets his first Pfizer shot on the side of the road with no informed consent. Within minutes, he develops a headache that continues to progress over the next 2 days while he waited the mandatory 48 hours before he could fly an aircraft. He gets in his agricultural airplane, he takes off. He's at about 200 feet going across the field. Both of his inner ears rupture at the same time. He loses all consciousness. He doesn't remember landing his aircraft. There's now 4 doctors, 4 specialists, 2 in Canada, 2 in the United States, who have said conclusively 34-year-old pilot Cody Flint's injury was a direct result of the COVID-19 vaccine. He's now left with a wife and 2 young children, and he's unable to provide for his family. Soon after Cody Flint became public with his story, another person came forward, Greg Pearson, a major airline captain. The first Pfizer shot, within hours, he's in the hospital in atrial fibrillation. Doesn't know if he's going to be able to go home to his family. He thinks he's going to die. Fortunately, Greg pulled through, but his flying career is over. And so Greg, he came out, he became public as well. He started telling his story. And then on April 9th, we have Captain Bob Snow, an American Airlines captain, flying an Airbus 321 with nearly 200 people on board from Colorado down to Dallas-Fort Worth. That was American Airlines 1067. 6 minutes after the wheels of that aircraft touched down on the runway, they pulled into the gate. And Captain Snow set the parking brake. They were in the deplaning process. As he stands up to collect his bags, he collapses in cardiac arrest. You see, Captain Snow was one of those pilots who succumbed to the mandates and the pressure at the airline. And as it turns out, he was diagnosed with something called subclinical myocarditis. This is inflammation of the heart muscle itself. And he had no symptoms up to this point. This is what makes it so dangerous. We know per studies coming out of Thailand that more than 54% of cases of myocarditis, which is a listed side effect on Pfizer's own documents, have no symptoms, meaning that the first symptom can often be sudden death. And as if that's not concerning enough, also new studies have come out that said myocarditis left untreated has a 20% mortality rate within 2 years and a 50% mortality rate within 5 years. So you can understand the significance of that. If an airline pilot has a subclinical case, doesn't realize they're affected. And what's even more concerning is that the Federal Aviation Administration, even though we notified them on December 15th of 2021 via a 10-page letter signed by doctors, scientists, and lawyers and other experts, we warned them that this was going to happen. And yet the FAA did nothing to stop it. In fact, they encouraged pilots to go ahead and get the shot and allowed the airlines to mandate it. So now we're seeing just an incredible fallout. I work with hundreds of pilots who are vaccine injured, many of them afraid to come forward, many having cardiac issues. We were just at an air show, Sun and Fun Air Show here in Lakeland, Florida, less than 2 weeks ago. We had a booth there for 6 days, and over that 6-day period, we had more than 50 vaccine-injured pilots come past our booth to talk to our doctors to get free consults, saying, look, many of them still flying, afraid to speak up, afraid of losing their careers and being placed on long-term disability, which is a fraction of what they would earn as a pilot. This is a problem. This is a major problem, and it all stems back to the fact that there was no informed consent and there were medical mandates. And unfortunately, that doesn't just affect the pilots and the flight attendants, that affects you as passengers. It also affects everyone who's on the ground. You know, should there be an accident, leaving a major city, there are too many counts to even discuss. I mean, back in November of 2022, there was a flight, American Eagle flight, leaving Chicago O'Hare's airport. 90 seconds after that aircraft was cleared for departure, The captain, he was a captain in training. He was joined by a very experienced check airman who was sitting in the right seat. 90 seconds after that aircraft was cleared for departure, Captain Ford was deceased in the left seat. And it's very fortunate that he wasn't flying with a brand new first officer, someone who had, was new to the airplane. It was a very highly experienced gentleman, did a perfect job of bringing that aircraft back around and landing it. But that's a near miss by anyone's terms. And, more and more cases have happened. You haven't heard about them. We had 7 pilot incapacitations just in the month of March alone. And those are the ones that made the media. There are others that have occurred. We just had a flight attendant that passed away just a few days ago in flight. I know of at least 50 cases now of flight attendants who have passed away in flight, and many more at home. This is a significant issue, and we need the public to get involved. We need you to push back. I hope this helps you to understand the severity of the impact of illegal mandates that were brought to this country. And it's not just our industry that it's affected. It's you. It's normal people. You just don't hear about these deaths. You don't hear about these incapacitations and the medical issues because it doesn't make the news. That doesn't mean it's not happening. It is absolutely happening. And I would implore you to pass this resolution. You have an option here to take local action that's going to have a national impact, just like Ann Vandersteel said. And I believe that I'm looking at a group of leaders. The fact that you even, that you'll sit here and you'll listen to this and that you'll take this into consideration says a lot about your character. And I would just like to thank you so much for being here today.
Your next speaker is Erin Olszewski. She'll be followed by Sherry Palmer Jennings. Erin has been seated additional time from James Rosenberger. James, are you here? She will have a total of 6 minutes.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you guys so much for having me here and also listening to all of us. It's very unheard of these days. My name is Erin Olszewski, and I'm here in support of the Collier Health Freedom Bill of Rights Ordinance and the Health Freedom Resolution. A little bit about my background and why it's important that you understand how imperative it is that what I'm about to share with you is in your decision today. First, I'm a mom. I have 3 boys. I'm here to protect them, but I'm also here to protect and defend your children and grandchildren as well. I'm a registered nurse. I'm here to stand up for my patients and honor those who have died unnecessarily. I'm an author of a book that is no longer allowed on bookshelves, which I'm going to give each of you a copy to read because of censorship. They won't even put it on bookshelves so people won't find out what's going on. And also, I'm an Army combat veteran. I served over a year in Iraq, 2003 to 2004. Commissioner LaCastro, thank you for your service. And Commissioner Cowell, thank you for your service as well. I'm here, my oath never expires, not only to my country, but also to my patients. So at the height of the pandemic, I actually traveled from Florida in the Tampa Bay area to New York to work in the COVID ICU. I actually was placed at the epicenter of the epicenter, which is Elmhurst Hospital in Queens, New York. I just want to make this very clear that this was not just solely happening in New York, but all around our great nation, including Florida, and more specifically right here in your county. I know this because upon my return after getting kicked out of New York for trying to advocate for my patients, I began advocating for patients all around Florida, the same situation in every single hospital. What I witnessed in New York can only just be described as a turnkey-style assembly line to a body bag. There's no liability. There's gag orders on all of our staff, including myself. We were threatened to be sent home if we said anything. They banned family members, which are the patient's advocates, which should never happen ever again. They banned treatments. I always say that politicians make lousy doctors. A politician or government should never get in between the doctor-patient relationship ever again. If they wanted to do that, they can go to medical school or become a nurse. There was financial incentives put on admissions of patients, so $13,000 to admit patients. So why not? We were actually ordered down from sending any of the patients to the comfort ship, which was wide open. The Javits Center was empty. The Good Samaritan tents were empty. They admitted him for $13,000 a person. The protocols consisted of sedation, paralyzing agents, and then essentially a vent. Some of the patients' rooms that I went into, there was feces dried up their backs for 2-3 weeks. They had bed sores where you could see their bones at this point. They weren't coding full code patients. Being a full code means that you want all resuscitation done and all measures done. CPR, you want to be saved. They were not doing that. And they were not doing it behind locked hospital doors, and nobody knew except for the people that were in there. They ended up in a body bag. Eventually, we just had garbage bags, and then they were tossed into the freezer trucks. Every single one of my patients, outside of one patient, died, and I had to stack their bodies in these freezer trucks, but they were not dying of COVID. And on top of that, they ended up banning autopsies. So there was a $39,000 price tag for the ventilators and sometimes $10,000 for each death. It's absolutely disgusting. I tried to say something and I was unable to. I was threatened with being sent home, so I decided that I was gonna go undercover, got some spy glasses, got some audio gear, and I started recording for the next 4 weeks. I'd like to share a little clip, if I could, because I think that is very important that you actually hear with your own ears what is actually, what happened, what continues to happen to this very day in the hospitals. This is a seasoned medical doctor working at the New York City hospital. He was on a travel assignment. He was making approximately $75,000 a week. Nurses were getting $10,000 a week, so this was hush money, in my opinion. He ended up calling all the nurses together after he was essentially busted for not coding a full coded patient, and actually wrote her death certificate before she even died, and then called the family and lied to them. But I'd like to just have this on record because I think it's very important that the public know that this happened and this was going on.
If there was family in the room, if the ethics committees was in there and Jaco was standing in the room, you guys wouldn't do what you guys just did. No. Like, you guys would have been way more proactive.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's what I have a problem with. Because if you, in good conscience, could say, well, we would have done the same thing regardless of who was watching us right now, then I'd be like, all right, fine. But I don't feel like that's the case.
Let me ask you a question. And this is whatever your opinion is. What do you think the right thing to do for her is in that setting that we just had?
It doesn't matter.
I think the right thing to do for her is what she wants.
Yeah.
And what she wanted at that time was a full code. So that's what she said.
Okay.
Now, during that time when she was crashing, she was full code. You guys were already having conversations with the nurse to not code this patient. And when I went to go call the code, you were saying, no, don't call code.
Right.
But at that time, she was full code.
Yep.
Later on, she became DNR, I think, around 145.
Yep.
But when she was crashing, it was 115, 120.
Yep.
So if you don't want to code a patient, you need to aggressively contact the family to make it a DNR before this happens.
Totally agree.
To put up.
I'm going to cut it short. I know that my time is short, but that's clearly a murder. I'm just going to end with this. The last thing standing between a patient and a body bag is a good nurse. If a good nurse isn't allowed, sorry, this is tough. Sorry. If a good nurse isn't allowed to do her job, sorry. Sorry. Then it's an automatic death sentence for our patients. And we're forced to watch them die unnecessarily. And now we have to live with that reality forever in our hearts and our souls. And you know, a lot of us have been holding the line for a really long time. And this dam is about to break, and we are calling for reinforcements. We need you guys to support us to make sure that this never, ever happens again, because it could be you, it could be your family members next time. And any person that's in opposition of this resolution in the ordinance is likely someone that you don't want taking care of you, or they have something to hide. So on this, united we stand against those we trusted. I hope that you guys will really dig deep in your souls and your hearts and understand that this is good for humanity, not only Floridians, but all over the world. So God bless you, and thank you for listening to me.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Miller, we'll go with this. Will be the last speaker, then we'll have a break, and then we'll resume with the speakers.
Your next speaker is Sherry Palmer Jennings, and she'll be followed by Dr. Paul Alexander.
Dr. Alexander, you'll be immediately after the break.
You should have gotten the vaccine. You should have gotten the booster shot. These were some of the last words my patients heard from fellow healthcare providers they trusted. Then these same healthcare providers turned to other nurses like me, telling me those patients deserve to die. Imagine if that was you or your loved one. Maybe it already happened, but without your knowledge. And to think these patients were denied early life-saving treatments. My name is Sherry Palmer Jennings, and I'm a local acute care registered nurse who worked on the front lines in one of the first COVID units in Florida. This is one of the many unfortunate events I witnessed and fought back against, and how that led me to support the proposed Bill of Rights ordinance and Health Freedom Resolution. I want to share with you more of what my patients and my peers went through as a healthcare provider. I represent myself, my nursing profession, the COVID task force, and do not speak for nor affiliate myself with any other entity. I worked COVID-19 as the intermediate care nurse and continue to care for these patients to this day. I understand how serious this virus is. I have also cared for many patients who suffered or died from the vaccine since February of 2021 in acute care. I just took care of a sweet person just last week who kept up with their CDC recommended booster shots and still died the same horrifying way others have died from COVID-19. This vaccine was a mistake as it does not prevent infection or transmission. I've also witnessed coercion, shaming, and suffering amongst my community for choosing not to get vaccinated. I've educated many of them to honor their civil rights and help them fight for their exemptions against the vaccine because local private entities were refusing to honor them or approve of them. Many of my peers were able to keep their jobs or stay in their nursing school programs, but many did not and could not fight back because they didn't know how. This bill would help prevent that from happening again and build a larger workforce locally, rather than dwindle it and lose the great talent we do have. I witnessed medical tyranny from the current workforce we do have. Providers told families there was nothing more they can do for their loved ones and encouraged families to code them as A&D or allow natural death, meaning you stop all treatments and let a person die. We had hallways of these patients. Many of these patients couldn't be kept comfortable enough, had nowhere to be discharged to, and per providers, they took up a bed. These patients were starved, overly medicated with drugs, and alone. I remember breaking down when I started my shift because I found 2 out of my 3 A&D patients deceased and in stages of rigor mortis. They died alone. So I started FaceTiming with families multiple times a day and convinced them to change their code status to A&D. And providers convinced them. Because families could see their loved ones on FaceTime, they changed their mind about A&D and continued to treat their loved ones. Some family members didn't even know they could change their mind. They were failed by the system that they should have been able to count on. Providers tried to fight them back in the end. They had to listen. Because of that, some of those patients made it out of the hospital back to their loved ones. And I'm sorry, I know I'm a little over. I'm just going to end it with, I emphasize my unconditional support for the Bill of Rights ordinance and Health Freedom Resolution and urge you to vote in favor of them. Be the leaders paving the way of the preservation of our constitutional republic. We can do better, especially for our community. Thank you, commissioners, for being brave and for your time. Thank you.
We will take a court reporter break, and we will resume at 10:50. Yeah, I can't.
Chair, you have a live mic.
There was a lot more.
Fine, not right now. We're getting ready to start a meeting. Okay, well, maybe I need to talk with you. Okay, go ahead. Let's get started.
Okay, we'll continue with our public speakers. Folks, if you will, please have your seats. Your next speaker is David Parsons. He'll be followed by Karen Kingston. They're in the hall.
Good morning. Oop,
Morning, sir.
am I on?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, cool. I am David Parsons. I am a resident of Collier County. And in July of 2021, COVID vaccines became widely available. And at that time, early July, about 50% of the U.S. population had at least received one shot. Between then and now, 500,000 Americans died from COVID infections. In my 3 minutes, I want to talk a little bit about the 500,000. First, people over 65 years of age and older were 350 of the 500,000. There are other over 65s here, I believe. That group represents only 17% of the population, but they had 72% of the deaths. It's kind of a 13-to-1 ratio between we'll call them seniors and everybody else in terms of the probability of dying from COVID. Among the age 65 and over, by now, almost 90% of that group have been vaccinated with at least one shot. During that period, the probability of dying from COVID among that group of vaccinated seniors was 1 chance in 546. Pretty good odds. Unvaccinated, the small 10% or so who were not vaccinated, the probability was 1 out of 39. The numbers show, and these numbers basically are reported at the level of 3,200 counties in the United States and percolate up through various channels. So this ratio of 546, 1 chance in 546 if you've been vaccinated, 1 chance in 39, is pretty good evidence that the vaccines were working for a large number of those people. Vaccination was not perfect. Vaccinated people died, no doubt about it, but at a much smaller rate than those unvaccinated. Among the under 65s, if you'd been vaccinated, your probability of dying of COVID was 1 chance in over 10,000. Phenomenal odds. Unvaccinated, the unvaccinated group, which constituted about 100 million people, unvaccinated, under 65, your chances of dying were 1 in 1,500. Also very good odds. And thinking about that group, and I've actually, going back a year or so, I knew people in that rather large age group who felt like the chances of serious illness were not great. They might as well just get the virus and get out of the way and become immune through infection, which has proven to be actually very effective. So it's understandable for people with a perceived and actual very low probability of infection to weigh the pros and cons of vaccination. They may see it being risky. They may just not like to get shots. Viewing it strictly from the standpoint of their own health probabilities, it's not unreasonable to think that they would not get a shot.
You can wrap up, sir.
Oh, my God.
Sir. 3 minutes goes fast.
Okay, very quickly. What they didn't understand was that between the time you get infected and the time you have symptoms, several days pass when you can infect other people. And it's that problem of infecting other people that many organizations had to deal with when to reopen and what protections to take to protect their other employees.
Thank you.
My concern is that this proposed legislation will keep people from making those kinds of judgments on their own.
Thank you, sir.
3 minutes doesn't last very long, does it?
Your next speaker is Karen Kingston. She'll be followed by Dr. George Yakos. Karen has been seated additional time from Terry Codella Casterson? Casterson. Is she here?
Right there.
Oh, thank you. Also by Jim Guzzi. Am I getting that right? Guzzi, thank you very much. She'll have a total of 9 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Karen Kingston. Just so people know who I am, I'm a med legal advisor and biotech analyst in the industry. My work is currently being used in global criminal prosecution of Pfizer. Also, South Africa began prosecuting Pfizer. And what I'm going to talk about today is why we're here. So why maybe some people want to continue to surrender their constitutional rights to the government. And I also want to talk about laws that are passed by the federal government that actually legalize crime, and how unfortunate it is that people believe that if they go along with legalized crime that they are above judgment in the law, because unfortunately judgment is coming, whether it's from the people of the United States of America or outside military powers. What we have done is very wrong. And I do wish the knowledge I have upon nobody, but I do wish to share with you some information that may hopefully guide your decisions today in regards to the ordinance and the importance of standing up for our unalienable God-given rights under the U.S. Constitution and the Florida Constitution. So up here, Joe Biden last night dropped the COVID-19 emergency. That means a lot of immunity for people who committed crimes, such as what Aaron just spoke about, Nurse Aaron, those doctors. That immunity is going away. So judgment is coming. So I have to do the clicker thing again. How do I do that? Spacebar. Okay. So what is authoritarian? And I want to go through this. There was a study out of University of Toronto across 31 nations and hundreds of counties and communities just like Collier County. And the definition of authoritarian, and I took this from the 1983 Webster Dictionary when we had President Reagan, because words mean different stuff today. So we got to go back to the 80s. It's when our individual freedom is held completely subordinate to a group or an individual, to the power of the state, that is not constitutionally accountable to the people. This is what we don't want. We don't want to pass laws. We don't want to submit to federal laws. We don't want to submit to state laws that are not constitutionally accountable to the people, because that is tyranny. And in some cases, it's actually criminal. This is the study. It was published in a peer-reviewed journal, again, across 31 nations and over 100 communities around the globe. And what they looked at is how do we get people so terrified that they would submit all of their rights and demand others do the same? And it's called the parasite stress hypothesis. It's out of the University of Toronto. The study was done in 2013. So a parasite is any virus, bacteria, or a parasite. And a democratic form of government is one where we have popular participation, there's a political process, there's individual freedoms and rights, and we're open for debate. We have the freedom of speech. But an authoritarian governance is one where you submit to one single power, and anyone that goes against what the current narrative is, what the current demands are, what the current rules are, is seen as an outcast and is punished either socially or even criminally. Let's keep going for time. Uh-oh. I hit the wrong button again.
Try escape and then.
Thanks, Dan. Dan the man. All right, so here we go. Let me just keep going. So this is the study about whether or not people at an individual level would submit to an authoritarian power. And what they looked at is in a community, let's say there was a grave difference in income, let's say we threatened them with famine, let's say that there was a big difference in education, nothing really swayed them that much to submit all of their rights. But one thing did, and that was threatening them with a highly infectious virus. And then all of a sudden at the individual level, I wanted you to tell me what to do so I don't get hurt and my family doesn't get hurt, and I demand that others do the same. So what's interesting, though, is the more education you have, the less likely you would submit to an authoritarian governance unless you were threatened with a highly infectious pathogen. By the way, a lot of this research is done out of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and there's an interesting study out of Harvard I'll share with you later. The environmental stuff that we do, 15 years, they figured out how to manipulate Americans to do things that we wouldn't normally do and actually cost us. So back at the study, it shows that the individual level, if you perceive that you're at a high infectious risk, you're going to conform and you're going to demand others that don't. So this is why people all masked the children, wore masks at the grocery stores, forced people to stand 6 feet apart, and and condemned others who would not go along with this. It's also why on Facebook you had the I Got Vaccinated tab to show people that you were part of the group, you were not going to be outside the group, because everyone was terrified that they were going to be infected. And then we know that on March 16th, Deborah Birx said they didn't know a lot about the virus, and so they need everyone to stay home. So they demanded everyone go on house arrest. President Trump said people started policing their own communities. Again, this was a psychological warfare, if you will, because Deborah Birx lied, and so did Anthony Fauci, because on February 28th, they published in the New England Journal of Medicine that the COVID virus was the same as the flu. It had a 0.1% case fatality rate when it was out in the wild, if you will. And then on March 31st, they continued their lines that 2.2 million people would die if we didn't lock down. So what happens at the social level? Again, across hundreds of communities, what they found is the pathogen stress, people would submit together as a community. They would say, please tell us what to do so that we don't get infected and our families don't get infected. And what they found was that when they combined a virus being prevalent, so ubiquitous across the country, and also highly deadly, so those are the two components of pathogen stress, the correlation was 0.87. That's a nearly perfect one correlation. This is higher than the correlation between education and income. So they knew that if they threatened communities with a highly infectious, highly contagious virus, they would do whatever they were told. And they would submit to an authoritarian government. They would even be willing to give up their liberty, their property, and participating in the voting process. That's exactly what happened. Now, what's on the horizon is the IHR, the International Health Regulations from the WHO, which, if they're passed, they're basically a treaty. And as Mr. Klausko knows, a treaty in the United States is basically considered the supreme law of the land. Article 6 of the Constitution often does not override it based on SCOTUS's past rulings. So this international health regulations, it talks about using health technologies, that these will be mandated. It talks about that they're going to put together readiness and resilience in ways that commensurate with a restricted, not to public health risk, but all risks that could potentially impact health. So this could say there's an environmental risk, there's mosquitoes, there's one pig in Denver, and so we need to lock down the country. But one of the most alarming things in the regulation is under Article 3, where they deleted the implementation of these regulations shall be, and they deleted with full respect for dignity, human rights, and fundamental freedoms of persons. This is what's on the horizon. And if it's passed as a treaty, and we do not honor to uphold our constitutional rights under the Constitution in the state of Florida, this is how the residents of Collier County can be treated. Our worst nightmares have still not happened. So what happened during COVID-19? I don't know if everyone's familiar with the PrEP Act, but what was passed by our Congress was that an emergency use product could be passed that may be effective. It didn't have to go through the standard FDA safety and efficacy trials. But what people don't realize is that that product, per what's passed by Congress, says that it may result in adverse health consequences or even death. So these vaccines, they knew it could have resulted in death and chronic disease. And it may be caused by administering the drug, biological agent, or device against the chemical, biological, radio, or nuclear threat. So they knew this was going to cause disease, disabilities, and death. This is just reiterated in the guidance. So when Pfizer met with the FDA on October 22nd, 2020, they knew they were going to put people at unreasonable risk for all of these diseases, including death, and they moved forward with it. Why would they do that? Because under the PrEP Act, willful misconduct is also waived. You have immunity. So if you know what you're doing is wrong, if you know there's no legal or factual justification, and you know that the risk outweighs the benefit, as long as you're following orders from HHS and you're a manufacturer, you can get away with murder. And so I just ask that you respect the rights of Collier County residents and children to not put forth an ordinance that does not declare that the federal government has the right to put their children at risk for disease, disabilities, or death, and the criminals that are doing this have legal and civil immunity. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Dr. George Yakos. He'll be followed by Tamara L. Mitchell. Dr. Yakos has been seated additional time from Ken Frazier and also from Jay Colhagen. And Dr. Yakos will have a total of 9 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Dr. George Yakos. I've been a board-certified cardiologist and a physician for over 30 years, and I'm not representing any corporation or hospital system today. Excuse me, I had to run up here. Early in my training, I was taught that the best way to learn to cure and to heal is to study the patients that have passed. Historically, most of what has been learned about the human body first came from the study of the people who had died. This has been the main way to establish the cause of death and what went wrong with treatments, so that the medical practitioner could better understand what can be done to prevent disease, suffering, death, and most importantly, what could be done differently to help others. Autopsies were deemed so important to medical education and the advancement of science that up until the early 1990s, medical residency programs would actually give gifts and books to residents to actually get them to convince family members to have their deceased family members go for autopsies and postmortem exams. In 2020, during the biggest health crisis to hit the modern world, for the first time, advancing science was discouraged. A postmortem examination was thought to be inappropriate, and there was a fear that the physician was going to get COVID, and that's why that wasn't allowed. By April 2020, 3.5 months into the U.S. landfall of COVID, community hospital pathologists decided to do their job against those recommendations. From those investigations sprang the knowledge that clotting played an integral role in the deaths of hospitalized patients. An email sent to Dr. Fauci about this discovery was met with a simple reply email of, "Thank you." That's it. Strangely, even though the local recommendations for blood thinning started to turn things around for the inpatients, the reality was that there was no proclamation by the federal or state agencies about this vital information for months, a testament to the government's slow, reactive nature. In 2021, deep into the COVID vaccination program, German families started requesting private autopsies after state and locally financed public coroners declared their family members died of natural causes. Why did families make requests for private autopsies? The people that died never had COVID, but were vaccinated, and the families were suspicious that their family members were dying as a result of the COVID shot. They did not believe the state or locally funded coroner's conclusions. In January of 2022, a group of world-renowned pathologists led by Dr. Arne Burkhardt were contracted by the families, and they ended up releasing their private autopsy results, which were very enlightening. The majority of those who were deemed dead of natural causes had actually died as a consequence of the COVID shot. The team had developed a test to detect the spike protein in these patients who never had a COVID infection but were vaccinated. Microscopically, they found the spike protein being expressed in every organ system. Not just at the injection site, it was found in the brain, the heart, the coronary arteries, the kidneys, the spleen, the lungs, the lymph nodes, and the aorta. Shockingly, the patient's own blood cells, white blood cells, were seen actually attacking every one of these organs where the spike was being expressed, and this was causing clots, aortic dissections, heart attacks, myocarditis, encephalitis, and lung damage. All names of natural causes of death, but these people were killed by an autoimmune reaction to the spike protein produced by the COVID shot. With all of the sudden deaths in our younger population, and the increased death rate since the inception of the vaccination program, I have yet to hear of an autopsy series in the United States using this technology. And what has now been well documented by video testimony, many morticians in the United States have been identifying a high percentage of fibrous clots being identified in vaccinated family members, which microscopically resemble amyloid plaques. These are abnormally folded proteins in the blood. These fibrous clots are not blood clots, as one would expect when you're embalming a body, but they're long, rubbery clogs spanning the full length of arteries and veins in all parts of the body. There's been an exploding number of these observations made by morticians only since the COVID vaccination program began. Yet I have not seen any federal or state agencies investigating these findings. Despite this information and many other data points, we are now seeing hospital systems threatening the abandonment of patients who are making their own informed decisions. Children and adults have been denied transplants and health care because they did not get the COVID shot. Globally, people who need blood transfusions and are requesting blood from unvaccinated donors are being denied access. Parents in New Zealand, a very exemplary case, parents in New Zealand had their child taken by the state for even making such a request for their sick child. Despite the parents having their child's blood type, they were refused the ability to do that for their kid. We are now seeing small groups of people organizing local cooperatives to create a pool of non-COVID vaccinated blood donors. Yet there is no forthcoming information from the global, federal, or state health agencies regarding this concern. I bring forth these real-world examples to highlight that the reactionary characteristics of the global or federal agencies have and will continue to fail local health systems and populations. Although these centralized health agencies have created an excellent way to disseminate information, the system primarily focuses on recommendations driven by corporate agendas and blocks real-world data and solutions being generated at the local level. Collier County has to create as many firewalls as possible between international health bodies like the WHO, the federal alphabet agencies, the state health boards, and Big Pharma. The mistakes made during the pandemic need never be repeated. Voting yes to the ordinance and the resolution being presented will codify a health bill of rights, building another layer of protection, reaffirming innate rights for a person to decide what is best for their body, never forcing people to agree to health mandates driven by fear and greed, and most importantly, creating a firewall to tyrannical overreach by these health agencies. I thank you for having the bravery to hear and act on these matters before you. I would like to make one further proposition. When all is said and done, let's show other counties how to care for the health of their communities. I would ask that you consider convening a local health congress inviting the major hospital systems, local health practitioners, and citizens of Collier County to review and even debate with experts over what can be done to protect from future attacks on our health rights. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Tamara L. Mitchell. She'll be followed by Kathleen Ludwig.
I'm Tamara Mitchell, a Collier County resident, retired registered nurse and health law attorney. For over 20 years, I represented hospitals and healthcare providers. A big part of my job was to keep them out of the courtroom. And I know one of your parts of your job is to listen here to everyone's stories. But I, unlike the previous speakers, would like to focus on what the documents actually say. When I read the proposed resolution and ordinance, I was shocked at the vague, unsubstantiated statements being used as fear tactics, as well as the multitude of cites to the Constitution that tie into nothing. Just because you throw in a bunch of legal jargon doesn't make it legal. Did you know there are a number of inconsistencies between the proposed documents and Florida statutes, especially in the resolution? It's pretty obvious that these documents, especially the resolution, weren't drafted by anyone with knowledge of Florida law. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, I can't go into all these inconsistencies, but I did send out emails to each of the commissioners over the weekend. The problem with these inconsistencies is that they can lead to lawsuits. And that will require Collier County to spend considerable sums of money in its defense. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't want my hard-earned taxpayer dollars spent this way. I would hope that these potential legal problems alone would be enough for you to decline to adopt the proposed resolution and ordinance. But in case they're not, let me add some other important considerations. First of all, many concerned citizens in Collier County do not agree with the resolution's premises, and they find the document misleading, inaccurate, incomplete, and unnecessarily provocative. Second, don't you find it at all ironic that the so-called health freedom documents contain so many ways to prohibit healthcare measures that keep us healthy? For instance, if you read Section 8 of the proposed resolution, it broadly proclaims that citizens cannot be denied entrance based on their medical status. But it doesn't say entrance to what? Maybe your home, your child's school, or your business? Presumably, this was intended to bar hospitals from denying entrance to visitors. But do you really want hospitals to be required to let people with COVID in to visit immunosuppressed cancer patients? And taking the broad language a step further, do you want to have schools be required to admit children with Ebola into the classroom? What about other life-threatening diseases that may arise in the future? This proposed resolution seeks to render us powerless to keep infected people away from others, and that doesn't sound very safe or smart to me. Fortunately, resolutions by their very nature have no legal authority. Not so with the ordinances. The stated purpose of the proposed ordinance is to mirror existing state law. So my question is, why do we even need a redundant ordinance? Collier County citizens and businesses are already subject to state law. There is a Bill of Rights already in state law. The clear answer is we don't need this resolution or this ordinance, and I urge the commissioners to vote no in the adoption of them. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Kathleen Ludwig. She'll be followed by April Donahue.
Thank you, commissioners, for listening to us today, giving us your time. I know that's a lot of work, and we appreciate it. My name is Kathleen Ludwig, and I'm a 10-year resident of Naples, and I vote. So I like to know what's going on in my county, and I'm very pleased to be here today before you to talk about this. I'm speaking as a private citizen. I just became aware of the details of this yesterday, so I put together a few notes. I don't have any slides or presentations or anything, just my heartfelt feelings. But I am on the Health Advisory Board of the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and my husband had been on that board before me, so I have paid very close attention to the data for the past 3 years. We have had meetings about it. It's been broadcast different places, and I follow it, and I understand where it comes from. I understand that the county reports their data up through the system to the CDC. And so when I looked at the data, Florida had the worst, abysmal data in the whole, not the worst in the whole country, but among the worst in the whole country. It was terrible. 87,000 deaths reported from COVID. Now, since we talked about New York and Elmhurst Hospital, New York has had 78,000 deaths, and they're approximately the same size state. So it's a terrible record, and a lot of this, I believe, comes from lack of vaccination, lack of education, lack of non-pharmaceutical interventions being practiced here in Florida. In January of 2022, the virus was rampant, and we were wide open down here. Everybody was going about their business, and we had a huge spike in deaths. New York had a huge spike in cases, but not in deaths. As for the WHO, we are members of the WHO. That's not a third party, that's us. That's every country that belongs there. And they give advice and recommendations. If you look on their website, they do not have mandates, it's advice. And the World Economic Forum, I don't exactly know what that has to do with this. I've been there, and they haven't met much in the past couple of years, so I don't really know what they have to do with this. The mRNA technology has been around for 15 years. It is not new. COVID is new. It's a novel virus. And again, I agree that you need to have data to support the statements that are made here. You can't just make broad statements and expect people to go along with it. They're stories, they're not facts. So I encourage you to please look at this carefully, and thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Your next speaker is April Donahue. She'll be followed by Rebecca Smith.
Good morning, Commissioners and Chair LaCastro. I'm April Donahue, Executive Director of Collier County Medical Society. And first, I have a statement from Dr. Rebecca Witherwell, a board-certified infectious disease physician in our community who could not testify today. She says, I have reviewed the proposed ordinance and resolution, and I appreciate your consideration of the concerns of the community members on these issues. The COVID global pandemic has been a terrible experience for the world, our country, and our community. Millions of lives have been lost due to this aggressive virus, and we all want to protect ourselves and our rights. We must find a balance of individual freedoms and public safety. We have many freedoms in this country, and we also have many laws and regulations to protect us. It will be a great disservice to our community members to disregard the expert guidance of scientific bodies and under the guise of protecting personal freedoms. We do not know what the future holds for any of us as individuals, but one thing that is certain is the occurrence of another pandemic. Pandemics and the spread of disease are one of the few things guaranteed in this world. As a physician and as a community member, I want to ensure that Naples is well protected while preserving personal freedoms. It would be negligent of the Commission to make large blanketing decisions today based on fear-mongering and distrust of large scientific groups. There has been a descent from trust in data and science during the pandemic due to fear, stress, and other factors. It is not easy to face the things that we have over the past 3 years. It is a defense mechanism to put trust in anecdotes of a neighbor, friend, or celebrity on television. We need to remain united in our goal to protect our freedoms and our community members by recognizing threats and addressing them individually after reviewing the accurate and real-time data that is impacting the outcomes of our lives. When considering this resolution and ordinance, it is important to remember that we cannot assume to know when the next pandemic will come or to understand the ways it will impact our community. The concerns brought forward in these resolution and ordinance are reactions to the past, and while we know hindsight is 20/20, it does not allow us to see future ramifications. It is detrimental to our community to blindly create regulations or restrictions now that will limit our ability to address future threats to our community and its members. And I also have a statement on behalf of the CCMS Board of Directors. We respect individual freedom of choice and seek to preserve the physician-patient relationship, and we have concerns with the proposed ordinance and resolution. The ordinance is by and large redundant of state law and therefore unnecessary at a county level. We recognize our patients' rights and freedoms through the state's current statute 381.026. This promotes the interest and well-being of patients of healthcare providers and healthcare facilities. But if this county ordinance is to be adopted, we request the following amendments. The exemptions for healthcare providers as detailed in Florida Statute 381.00316 should be added, as this county ordinance is intended to mirror state law, and those exemptions allow healthcare providers the freedom to protect their patients and staff in a public health emergency. Second, sections 7 through 9 should be amended to allow for a simple majority or supermajority vote instead of unanimous, because allowing a potential outlier member of the commission to have de facto veto power is generally not good policy, particularly during a public health crisis. I just have one quick little more statement. After reviewing the revised resolution, we believe it will not be effective in rebuilding the trust some community members have lost in public health efforts, and we cannot support it. If the commission chooses to move forward, we request the opportunity to work with you in the best interests of our community so that any final statement, which would reflect the will of the commission and our entire county, is free of inaccuracies and follows the preponderance of health and safety measures. Thank you for your time.
Your next speaker is Rebecca Smith. She'll be followed by Jane Schlechtweg. I hope I'm getting that close. Rebecca Smith has been seated 3 additional minutes from Dr. Marilyn Varco. Is Marilyn, can you? Yes, she's right there. So you'll have 6 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, County Commissioners. I'm Dr. Rebecca Smith, President of the Board of Directors of the Collier County Medical Society. I speak on their behalf. Based on review of the original and updated versions of the ordinance and resolution, we cannot support them as currently written. The ordinance and resolution need review by a group of individuals, including medical specialists, a constitutional attorney, representatives from the county commissioners, and the public, to compose balanced statements that ensure the individual health care rights of our Collier County citizens and respect the needs of our local businesses, while allowing for the provision of necessary public health interventions in the time of public health crises as determined by our medical professionals working in conjunction with federal, state, and local authorities. We respect individual health care rights and freedom of choice as it pertains to public health. We agree that international organizations should have no control over the implementation of healthcare protocols in the United States. However, none of us can predict the future. Dr. William Oslo, a famous, well-known infectious disease specialist, said, "The enemies of humanity are famine, fever, and war. To him, by far most, the worst enemy is fever, a sign of disease and infection. Our past world history has been greatly impacted by infectious diseases such as the bubonic plague, the influenza of 1918, smallpox, tuberculosis, and polio. Our healthcare workers today, we still see people with residual effects of polio and now with COVID-19. Factual public education, safe and effective preventive strategies, and innovative treatments will help preserve life and expedite recoveries from infectious disease. We do have concerns regarding the accuracy of information that has been reported, including the complications of the COVID-19 vaccine. For example, even the British Medical Journal published a major article entitled, COVID-19, Florida's Surgeon General uses careless research practices in recommending against vaccine, his university finds. Dr. Gregory Poland, a renowned contemporary infectious disease physician and researcher at the Mayo Clinic, commented recently during a presentation that he made to the NCH medical staff in March, I'll add a fourth enemy of humanity that may be even more influential than fever. This is human behavior and public response. In summary, both the ordinance and the resolution require a detailed review with representatives from multiple professionals in our community to make statements that are consistent with science, with reason, constitutional law, ethics, fairness, and in the best interest of the individual, but with consideration of our community needs and when other public health crises arise. If the board votes to proceed with further consideration of the ordinance and the resolution, then please consider all public health risks, not just those due to COVID-19. There will be another pandemic. We need to be forward-thinking. If Collier County is to approve such documents, then please do not rush. We should take the time to get this right. It is a reflection of our entire Collier County community. We will appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Jane Schlechtweg. I hope I'm getting close on your last name.
You're right.
And she'll be followed by Jennifer Walker.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Jane Schlechtweg. I am the Collier County Democratic Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of the Democratic Party today. We feel that this resolution and ordinance have been brought by a group of citizens that are angry with the federal government, who distrust the WHO and the CDC. It's filled with personal and inaccurate views, and we have not seen any reliable or reproducible evidence to warrant such an ordinance. Furthermore, since state and federal laws already exist, this ordinance is redundant and a waste of time, as others have pointed out. Your previous speaker, Ms. Mitchell, echoes our feelings, and I would just like to add that the Collier County Democratic Party has always and will always defend the right of any citizen to free speech and opinion, but opinion and their free speech should not govern the whole. If you want this ordinance on the books, this law, then you need to bring a referendum to the people on Election Day and let the Collier County citizens vote on to whether they are governed by pseudoscience and quackery, or if they want to keep themselves safe. Anyway, as an American, you have the right to your opinion, but you do not have the right to dictate public health. And based on this unproven internet theories advanced by uninformed minority, we oppose this ordinance. Thank you very much.
Your next speaker is Jennifer Walker. She will be followed by Kathy McQuarrie.
Thank you, Commissioners, for the opportunity to speak to you this morning about my very strong concerns regarding the amount of time and effort you have been expending on a discussion about a so-called health freedom ordinance and resolution. I am Jennifer Walker, a 30-year resident of Collier County, and have worked diligently during this time to make our community even better. I have been president of Greater Naples AAUW, president of Greater Naples Leadership, chair of the Board of Trustees of the Collier Community Foundation, and I've served on the boards of the Pace Center for Girls and the Healthcare Network of Southwest Florida. I've even been a poll worker, and most recently and currently, I am Justice Chair of the Justice Committee of the Naples United Church of Christ. But I'm speaking to you today not in any of those capacities, but as a very concerned, longtime citizen of Collier County, and as a polio victim, now dealing with post-polio syndrome because the Salk vaccine wasn't available when I contracted the disease as a child. So you should know that I have a profound appreciation for our country's public health system that has kept my children and grandchildren, excuse me, from suffering the effects of all the childhood diseases that have affected me. I have read the revised referendum you are thinking of adopting and find that you may have scrubbed the language a bit, but you've left the intent behind it. And the intent seems to be incendiary. It is worded to position the citizens of our county as opposed to and challenging some of our country's respected institutions. But why are you even spending any time contemplating this referendum? I know you try to explain it, I still don't understand. Existing federal and state law would trump anything you adopt here. It has no force of law, it is merely opinion. And it certainly isn't my opinion or the opinions of my friends, my colleagues, and my neighbors. It does seem to be the opinion of an opaque group that is apparently based in Washington, D.C., as best I can figure it out. I wish to thank Commissioner LaCastro for encouraging me to come and speak to you today and to express my concerns. He has always answered any email I sent him and has responded personally to every concern I raise. It does make me feel as if I have a representative in local government, even if we disagree. I do believe he is committed to listen to all his constituents and not just one group on one side of an issue. And so I want to encourage you all to devote your precious time and effort and that of the county staff to solve the very real problems we have in this county that you are in a position to solve. Please move with expediency on reducing the affordable housing obstacles, such as zoning laws and impact fees. Please work with other counties in our region to guarantee clean water for every citizen. But please don't waste your time and your relationship with your constituents on this distraction, this freedom from community health, whatever policies. Are we next going to be freedom from seatbelts? Thank you.
Your next speaker is Kathy McQuarrie. She'll be followed by Kate Tardif.
Gentlemen, the resolution that you're considering today begins by charging local governments and state governments and the federal government and healthcare institutions and one named International Health Organization, I guess thrown in for good measure, with causing harm, even death, to our citizens. This is just one remarkably overblown, unsubstantiated statements in this so-called Freedom Resolution. So here's how I remember it. 2 years ago, my neighbors and my friends, most over 65, and my family members, doctors, nurses, military members, eagerly sought to get a vaccination against COVID. And all of those people are doing just fine. My husband contracted COVID before there was a vaccine, and he died from COVID. So that's how I see it. That's how I remember it. I agree with the preceding speaker. I don't know why you are engaged in this controversy. I don't know why you think it's good government to appoint yourselves better health decision makers than doctors, medical researchers, and public health experts. We've been through 3 tough years. We've learned a lot. We still have a lot to learn, but we need to move forward And I urge you to forget the ideology and take care of the people. You failed to do that in February, when this ideology caused you to take money away from a program of healthcare education for the residents of Immokalee. This ideology led you to deprive many of our most needy residents important healthcare information. It was a callous act of disregard for the well-being of Collier County residents. And let me finish by saying you are inconsistent in your handling of health matters. In that February discussion, one of the commissioners suggested making a part of what you took away by using funds from the county budget. But the county manager said, no, healthcare isn't in the purview of the commissioners. So how is taking healthcare education away in your purview? How is supporting an extremist ideology about healthcare in your purview? Collier County is a great place to live. It has so much to recommend it. People come here to live, people come here to visit. Becoming a poster child for an extremist ideology puts a stain on our community. I urge you to vote no on the resolution and the ordinance and take care of the people.
Your next speaker is Kate Tardiff. She'll be followed by Edward Ludwig.
Hi again. Let's see. Can you all hear me? Yes. Thank you. Oh, hello, County Commissioners. Thank you for your long hours. Can you hear me really?
Yes.
Your hard work and commitment to the diverse Collier County citizens you represent and serve. Like you, many of us work hard for the betterment of life for all in Collier County, and like you, exhaust ourselves promoting the common good, respect, and peaceful coexistence of such diverse groups and opinions. So far, Collier County has managed to stay that way. Your careful handling of the unnecessary and volatile Health Freedom Ordinance and Resolution is mission critical to preserving the peace. Peace is unnecessary ingredient to attracting and keeping our visitors and owners and residents. Stirring animosity is not. The ordinance and proposal offers nothing that improves quality of life in Collier County. It does nothing to improve upon the peaceful environment. Rather, a hornet's nest was stirred, kicked, not for the betterment of Collier County. And now, just 2 weeks since officially proposing it, special interest groups and concerned citizens are rising up in anger. What is the benefit to Collier County owners, taxpayers, visitors, residents? What is the benefit of deepening local rifts and divides? Especially for an ordinance and/or resolution that will certainly immediately become litigious and cost us, Collier County taxpayers, retailers, restaurants, merchants, will cost us money and peaceful coexistence. And for what? Florida laws already offer most, if not all, of the legitimate protections this other group says we need, and without costly litigation. But who doesn't like a good show? The last meeting's, and again today's, seated time, multimedia, special guest appearances, presentations made for quite a show. The hornet's nest is stirred again. But still, it's not too late to reset the clock. March 28 may have released the horses of the Collier apocalypse from the barns, but today we still can, the commissioners still can rein them back in. I respectfully ask each of you to decline to further contemplate, thus promote, these Collier County powder kegs. Hopefully today you will please shut down the costly in so many, too many ways, the Health Freedom Bill of Rights and the Health Freedom Resolution. Thank you very much.
Your next speaker is Edward Ludwig. He'll be followed by Dr. Michael Finkel.
Thank you, Commissioners, and I'd like to thank Commissioner LaCastro. I only found out about this yesterday. I wrote an email to him last night, and he responded to it at 11:15, so God bless you for working late. I'm a 10-year resident of Naples. I represent myself and more than a few neighbors. I'm not part of any organization. I've worked for over 40 years in the medical technology industry. I've served as a CEO of a Fortune 300 medical technology company. I serve as a trustee of 4 hospitals in several states. I currently serve on the board of 2 public medical companies. I'm also a member of GNL, but I'm not speaking on their behalf. I'd like to call out several major observable problems with this proposed resolution. Number one, in the negative, this resolution is very, very long on inferences, hearsay, generalities, innuendo, and very short on competent, independent, verified facts and data. I urge the commissioners to ask for independent, competent verification of every one of the resolution statements. This should be easy to do. And if you find independent verification, proceed accordingly. On the positive scientific side, as I said, I've been an active professional student of the FDA, US FDA, for over 40 years. They do their homework, backed up by independent medical professionals and competent clinical trials data. Always, they are a gold standard. mRNA vaccines have been thoroughly scientifically developed and have been tested in clinical trials to be competent and safe. Those who criticize or doubt the mRNA platform haven't been following the verified scientific progress of this technology over the last 15 years. With respect to the recent COVID vaccines, they have been thoroughly clinically tested to be safe as prescribed by the FDA and CDC, period. Finally, with respect to the false and unethical assertions by our Florida State Surgeon General, and perhaps this was one of the root causes of the freedom proposition here. So finally, with respect to the false and unethical assertions by our Florida State Surgeon General that COVID vaccines were less safe than going it alone, these assertions were made in spite of the fact that the clinical evidence in the study he cited affirms that serious cardiac complications and fatalities were greater among those unvaccinated, and those who were vaccinated had better outcomes and fewer negative events. Read the study as recommended by Dr. Matt Hitchens. Our Surgeon General picked the data he wanted to support his point of view. Another definitive study evidenced 11 times lower risk of myocarditis if vaccinated, lower if vaccinated, 11x versus unvaccinated. Finally, I've personally read anecdotal reports that the risk of adverse events from COVID vaccine is less than the risks of taking regular or low-dose aspirin. Shall this resolution also ban aspirin if it's scientifically verified? Don't take my word for it. Look into it for yourselves. Thank you. Do your homework, then do the right thing. Follow the science. Don't bring us back to 1918 when flu ran rampant, or to 1950 when people died from before the polio vaccine. Thank you for your time.
Your next speaker is Dr. Michael Finkel, and he'll be followed by Nikki Blaha.
Listen, my fellow citizens, let's be respectful to everybody here. You know, we're trying to have a professional conversation. This isn't, like I said, the Jerry Springer show. Okay, so I applaud you all for being here on both sides of the aisle, but we really want to keep this professional. So, you know, cheering and scoffing at the speakers, you wouldn't want that if you were up at the podium. So just appreciate, you know, a bit of decorum. Sir, you have the floor.
Honorable Commissioners, my name is Michael Finkel. I'm speaking as a 24-year resident of Collier County who practiced medicine here for over 15 years. And I'm here to speak against the proposed ordinance and resolution. I'm a retired board-certified neurologist. I am past president of the Wisconsin Neurologic Society and the Florida Society of Neurology. I've been on the staffs of Mayo Clinic and of Cleveland Clinic. Please review my credentials online as a credible presenter and do the same for the people who've also presented positions contrary to mine. Decisions on issues related to health care must be based on reproducible data, not innuendo or, testimonials. Everyone is entitled to their own opinions, but not their own data. The U.S. and Florida constitutions are not established by any higher powers. There are no stone tablets from the mountains, but there are paper documents written by humans based on Greco-Roman concepts of democracy, of law, and of what a republic is. The founders of the U.S. Constitution were educated in these concepts and drew upon them, not any religious texts. The revised resolution is still fatally flawed. I will focus on why the interpretations of individual rights are subservient to public health necessities. The Florida Constitution clearly establishes the state's concern for the health of the public as an aggregate, without exceptions for individual desires. Per the state constitution, all counties have a Department of Public Health with county-wide responsibilities for the health of all. This is not a purview of the Board of County Commissioners. Similarly, the U.S. Congress has established the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. They were crucial to controlling COVID, among many other diseases, and preventing its spread. Today on National Public Radio, Florida Surgeon General Ladapo had been proven to have altered reports to fit his biases and totally misrepresented the conclusions of scientists. The University of Florida said that they could not discipline him as he would be disciplined in most situations by academic institutions because he was acting as Surgeon General, not as a member of the staff. The redundancy has been addressed. If you're going to do anything with this, first, you've got all the information recorded, get independent people to review the data and tell you what is reproducible and what is not. Finally, David Silverberg has made an excellent proposal regarding how to honor the healthcare workers and those who were patients here in Collier County during the COVID. It's a memorial to them. It's not a gotcha resolution.
Your next speaker is Nikki Blaha. She'll be followed by Jeannie Bullock.
My name is Nikki Blaha. I moved to Collier County in 1988. I'm 75 years old. I have been vaccinated for COVID, and yet I did catch COVID. And I spent at least 12 hours feeling achy. So I am very pleased that I took that vaccination and that protection. I am deeply disturbed by this proposal. There are people who do not believe in science, vaccination, masking, and quarantines. I suspect that those same people would suddenly become believers and want medical help based on science if they or someone they love had a heart attack, stroke, cancer, or other cancer treatments, or other medical emergencies. Your job is to make the best decisions for the greatest number of your constituents, not decisions based on a few people who are loud. Science deniers can choose to not get vaccinated, not wear masks, and not to quarantine themselves. If some of these folks work in health fields, I would suggest that they have gotten into the wrong field of work, and they need to work in fields where science is not a major part of the job. However, this ordinance would deprive me and others of the good medical care that I expect and have come to appreciate in Collier County. I want to feel confident and protected with the knowledge that all staff in hospitals, urgent care facilities, doctors' offices, medical and testing facilities, pharmacies, nursing homes, rehab centers, etc., are vaccinated and masked. Also, children are our most precious citizens. All public schools should allow the same protocol as hospitals so our children will be protected. The population of Collier County should not be forced to accept the primitive medical care of the late 1800s. These proposals should not be passed. Thank you for listening.
Your next speaker is Jeannie Bullock, and she'll be followed by Dr. Williams.
Good morning. I'm Jean Bullock, MD. I'm a radiologist, board certified, and I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to talk to you today. I'm very concerned that this resolution that has the word freedom in it is not going to promote freedom from disease. We've been through 3 very, very difficult years, but luckily in the year 2020, early 2021, a vaccine against COVID was developed at warp speed. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
At warp speed. It was just historic speed. We have never had a vaccination that was developed in less than a year. And so this was a wonderful thing. Unfortunately, the effectiveness of this vaccine in terms of curbing deaths, and we had a lot of deaths. We had the numbers of people who were dying daily in 2020 and early 2021 was like equivalent to several jetliners crashing, several 9/11s every single day. And so once this vaccine was available, luckily that number has decreased significantly, but still a lot of people died because of people who were anti-vaxxers. Let me just tell you a very brief story. Smallpox vaccination, when it was introduced, and it was sort of a kind of a ground roots thing, but Benjamin Franklin had the opportunity to have one of his sons kind of inoculated with fluid from the pustule of a smallpox victim, and he refused. He was sort of anti-vax in those days, and his son died from a severe case of smallpox, and this ruined the rest of his life. He always regretted the fact that he denied vaccination to his son. I know the invocation today, which really called for wisdom as our guiding force. I really urge all of you, that was so well put. Wisdom should be our guiding force, and we should be basing our decisions on science, and I really urge all of you to do that. You're in a position of really great power, and I urge you to turn down this bill, this resolution. Freedom involves responsibilities to others. None of us live in a bubble. If we carried this to an extreme, we'd say people don't have to have their pets immunized for rabies anymore. I don't think any of us would be in favor of that sort of thing. But there is a Florida resolution calling for vaccination. And I just think that if we said, I'm not vaccinating my pet, I think there'd be a lot of people who'd be upset. We owe it to other people. We owe it to all of our friends, neighbors, families to promote vaccination. I urge you to turn this resolution and Bill of Rights down. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chair, a quick question. According to our rules, the registration to speak on the line, I'm supposed to cut off at the beginning of the item. I'm starting to receive a couple more slips. I just wanted to make you aware of that, let you know. If you want me to cut it off, let me know. I'm going forward. Going forward. Your next speaker is Dr. Williams, then followed by Diane P. Moore.
Good morning. Yours is a tough challenge, a challenge of a grand jury and a regular criminal court. The grand jury process is the accumulation of facts, not prejudices, not gossip, but facts. My interest is in the facts. I'm a retired professor of pharmacology and internal medicine at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical School in Dallas and Parkland Hospital. I have 4 years of experience as head of the Cardiovascular Renal Research Division of the Hoffman LaRoche Corporation. I've had 2 years of research experience at NIH, not far from the laboratories of Anthony Fauci. I know that Anthony Fauci is one of the finest finest scientists, leaders, and anyone who attempts to undermine his reputation either are ignorant of the facts or have some sort of a political design. Anyway, I actually developed some of the technologies for measuring of messenger RNA in tiny fragments of the tubule of the kidney. I mention this because the mRNA vaccines that we have are extremely effective in preventing serious COVID-19. People who have had the vaccines have much less serious illness if they have been vaccinated, and nearly all of the people who have died from COVID-19 did not have vaccinations. You have a record here documenting Edward Ludwig's comments. I support those absolutely. I'm just very troubled. I just found out about this, and I just came on board here this morning, but I'm very troubled by what I see in this, and I request of you to not approve this resolution. I thank you very much.
Your next speaker is Diane P. Moore. She'll be followed by Melanie Chadwick.
Good morning. I'm Diane Preston Moore, and I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Collier County. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. We firmly believe in the individual rights that are established in the U.S. Constitution, but we cannot support the ordinance or the resolution. There's no question that COVID was unlike any other public health crisis. Hospitals, governments, agencies, businesses, and individuals made decisions, the best decisions that they could, based on evolving information. In any public health crisis, local, state, and federal governments must balance freedom with public health and safety. Citizens rely on their government to make decisions for the greater good and to provide for the public's safety in a time of a pandemic. The ordinance and the resolution preemptively limit freedom in the name of guaranteeing freedom. They tie the government's hands in the event of a future public health crisis. The ordinance allows for minority rule. It requires a unanimous vote of the commissioners for decisions like mask and vaccine mandates. But the board makes its decisions based on majority rule. Requiring a unanimous vote is the exact opposite of majority rule. Requiring unanimity is more like minority rule. That is, if one person disagrees, that person wins. That's not good policy. Both the ordinance and the resolution attempt to control the decisions of private businesses. The ordinance requires private businesses to rehire a terminated employee. The resolution suppresses the rights of private businesses, especially hospitals and medical institutions, to run their business as they see fit. A private business should be free to make the decisions it deems appropriate to run its operations. Local government should not interfere with those business decisions. The ordinance and resolution are overbroad, overreaching, they're vague, and they're unnecessary. They're imprecise, not specific, particularly the resolution. It's inaccurate, not factual. They misrepresent Florida law and the Constitution. They profess to protect health freedom, but they leave the most vulnerable at risk. I agree with Mr. Rivkees that new pandemics will come. If we experience a future public health crisis, one that might be more deadly than COVID, our local government must be able to react to protect public health and safety. We should not restrict freedom in the name of preserving freedom. And on that, the League respectfully urges you to vote no on the ordinance and on the resolution. Thank you.
Mr. Miller, one announcement that I'm just going to make in case anybody's out there pending is when we break at 12:20 or 12:30, when we break, that's when we're going to end any question and, turn-ins or whatnot. So people have a window between now and when we break for lunch to get you anything. And then when we resume after lunch, whatever you're sitting with in your hand, that's who we'll hear from.
Yes, sir.
Sound fair, County Manager and County Attorney?
Yes, sir.
Next.
Your next speaker is Melanie Chadwick. She'll be followed by Keith Flaw.
Hello, my name is Melanie Chadwick. I'm a Naples resident. I want to start out by saying that authoritarianism is not the same as public health emergency action, and to equate the two is really false. I also want to read a little bit from a New York Times article that made the point that back in 1898 to 1903, some Americans declared that they would never get vaccinated and raged at government efforts to compel them. Anti-vaccination groups spread propaganda about terrible side effects and corrupt doctors. State officials tried to ban mandates, and people made fake vaccination certificates to evade inoculation rules already in place. The disease was smallpox. So we see that in our country, Americans have periodically disliked mandates, but when we look back, we say, gosh, I'm glad smallpox is eradicated from this country. When the polio vaccine came out, my mother cried because she was so happy that her children would not have to have the threat of polio that has also been eradicated in this country. So there has always been opposition to mandates, but it hasn't always been partisan. It has become partisan now. I also want to point out that, legally speaking, the Supreme Court resolved the issue of mandatory vaccinations in 1905, ruling 7-2 in Jacobson versus Massachusetts that they were constitutional. This is Justice John Marshall Harlan, who is known for defending civil liberties, and he wrote, "Real liberty for all could not exist under the operation of a principle which recognizes the right of each individual person to use his own, whether in respect of his person or his property, regardless of the injury that may be done to others." And as other people have pointed out, we live in a community. We follow lots of rules. We do lots of things that we may not individually want to do, such as stopping at red lights, most of us, paying taxes, registering our cars, et cetera, et cetera. But we do it because we are part of a community. And this radical idea of freedom that somehow a person standing on top of a mountaintop all alone is not what a civilized society is about, and it's not what America is about. Wanted to just quickly point out, too, this is an article that was put together by the Pew Research Center. And I would say, too, anybody who knows anything about science knows that anecdotal evidence is the weakest kind of evidence. We've heard a lot of anecdotal evidence this morning. I'm so glad that other people have spoken up for science. Apparently in the pandemic, in the very beginning of the pandemic, it was in the cities that people died the most.
Ma'am, you'll need to wrap up soon. Thank you.
But starting with the spring of 2020, the third wave of the pandemic, counties that voted for Donald Trump over Joe Biden suffered substantially more deaths from the coronavirus pandemic than those that voted for Biden over Trump. And that has continued. The coronavirus death rate among the 20% of Americans living in counties that supported Trump by the highest margins in 2020 was about 170% of the death rate among the 1 in 5 Americans living in counties that supported Biden by the largest margins.
Ma'am, I respect your comments, but if you could just please wrap up.
I will wrap up by saying, so why is this being brought up? As so many people have pointed out, this is redundant, perhaps a waste of your time. I think that it's partisan, and part of what is being done is let's shake people's confidence in the CDC. Let's shake people's confidence in the WHO. Let's shake people's confidence in the FDA. And that looks familiar. There's a man who's currently
Thank you, ma'am.
under indictment who did a
Thank you,
lot
ma'am.
of that and got it started. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Keith Flaw. He'll be followed by Michael Sales.
Good afternoon. It is afternoon, so I can be the first to say that. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes. I won't take a lot of your time. On behalf of Florida Citizens Alliance, we're about 250,000 strong here in the state and over 50,000 here in Collier County. We strongly support the intent and the spirit of what you're doing, what you've been asked to pass in both the resolution and the ordinance. I would like to point out that I'd like to suggest you need an amendment to the ordinance. In sections 7, 8, and 9, there's a phrase at the end of each of those that says, and I quote, "without the unanimous vote of the board." I would suggest to you strongly that the 5 of you do not have the constitutional right to take away my individual rights or any of your constituents. That should be a period, full stop, without the exclusion. We saw multiple counties and local officials throughout the U.S. Unabashedly take away our constitutional rights that they did not have the authority to do. So I would ask you to make that amendment and move forward aggressively. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Michael Sales. He'll be followed by Kathy Gumpf.
Thank you. I bring a message from George Washington in 1777, which I think is relevant to our conversation today. General Washington wrote, finding smallpox to be spreading much and fearing that no precaution can prevent it from running through the whole of our army, I have determined that all troops shall be inoculated. This expedient may be attended by some inconveniences and some disadvantages, but yet I trust in its consequences, that its consequences will have the most happy effects. Necessity not only authorizes, but seems to require the measure. For should disorder infect the army in its natural way and rage with its usual virulence, we should have to dread it more than the sword of the enemy. And I do believe that General Washington's statement is quite relevant to the ordinance and the resolution that you are looking at today. For over 30 years, I worked with medical scientists at the Massachusetts General Hospital and Brigham and Women's Hospital, consistently 2 of the top-rated hospitals in the world. I should say 15 years. These scientists were not perfect, and neither were the systems that they worked in. But in general, they were tirelessly hard workers, and they were sticklers for the validity of their evidence and their conclusions. They did not cherry-pick data. That's not how science works. These scientists are the opposite of misinformation peddlers and outright liars like Alex Jones, who has purveyed so much of this disinformation that is driving the conspiracy theories that have influenced our population. This ordinance and this resolution will keep Collier County from paying close attention to folks who work at the Center for Disease Control and who are truly dedicated to the scientific method. Instead, it will further legitimate people who beat their chest loudly and tell you that drinking bleach is the way to cure your ills. These people who preach those sorts of things are frauds, and they can't defend their research because they don't know how to do research. I want to say, finally, Rendavir was mentioned in the course of this morning. If recollection serve, Rendavir is the drug that saved Donald Trump's life when he had COVID.
Your next speaker is Kathy Gumpf. I don't see Gumph. I don't see her approaching. I'll hold her aside. Libby Bramson. And Libby will be followed by Kathy Mio.
Mayo.
Mayo, yeah.
Mayo?
Mayo.
Kathy, you can queue up
It's
at the other
spelled, it's
podium.
spelled Mayo, but it's Mayo.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm a 25-year citizen of Collier County, District 2, and do not support the Health Freedom Initiative. As I researched online to learn more about the people who spoke on March 28th and those who are speaking today, I noticed that some of the speakers are nationally known in the health freedom area. I wondered how many high-profile health freedom media stars are residents of Collier County, and whether non-county speakers represent the will of us locals. The freedom speakers' stated concern about COVID vaccines is related to their belief that mainstream approved vaccines are not safe and that alternate treatments, including ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, are preferred. But they have provided no relevant, scientific, statistically projectable support for their concerns. I am alarmed that the freedom health these speakers are selling is filled with misinformation and inflammatory verbiage overlaid with a political agenda that removes science from medicine. I'm alarmed that one high-profile freedom leader claimed that Pfizer vaccine was filled with polyethylene glycol, an active ingredient used in antifreeze. This claim spread like wildfire. Actually, ethylene glycol is used in antifreeze. Polyethylene glycol is used in various vaccines and other pharmaceuticals. I'm very uneasy that two freedom speakers sit on the board of directors of Global Tech MD, an online telehealth company that sells its services for $49.95 a month. Other Global Tech directors include General Michael Flynn and Roger Stone, both recipients of presidential pardons. One freedom speaker physician is a patient advocate for Bulldog.com that markets a $255 jab kit for people who have accidentally been touched by a COVID test swab or inoculated with COVID vaccine. He promotes himself on his website, as a skilled speaker available for hire and shares his vision for the future, as well as shares disturbing tactics to achieve the future. I believe that Collier County residents have little to gain and much to lose if you approve the proposed health freedom initiatives. I respectfully ask you, I urge you to vote no for both resolution and ordinance. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Kathy Mayo. She'll be followed by Michelle Kelly.
Thank you, gentlemen. I was not going to speak, but I just can't sit here anymore and listen to so many just inconsistencies and just flat out lies about what really happened. All right, so we could sit here all day long and we can argue if the vax is effective, it's not effective, if people got hurt, people died. I know for a fact from the VAERS website just what has been reported, which we know is just a small fraction, that just in the past 2 years of this so-called vax, more people have had adverse effects and deaths than the past 30 years of every single vaccination combined. All right, so the smallpox and polio and all those, they had years of testing, years and years of testing. This thing was thrown out there without testing. People are dropping like flies. We see it every single day. Everybody in Hollywood, you see and soccer players fully healthy right on the field. They're just dying, boom, myocardia and heart attacks. It's just exponential deaths. I'm just actually furious that people can sit here and say that Anthony Fauci is some great, wonderful person. The man is a criminal and should be in jail. They have lied to us. The government has lied to us. The CDC has lied to us. The WHO, FBI, DOJ. This was a pandemic. It was totally created, and you think that we're not going to have another pandemic next year, that it's an election year, you are all mistaken. Because let me tell you, they are coming after every one of us. And after they come after all the Republicans, they're going to come after all you Democrats too.
Ma'am,
So,
ma'am.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
ma'am.
We need to, this
Ma'am,
is about freedom.
You're speaking to us.
Okay, I'm speaking to you. Okay, you know my son is in the military. He's a staff sergeant in South Korea right now. He is 23 years old. He's totally healthy. He was forced to take this shot. He is so upset about it. So many of his friends have been adversely affected. You heard from some last meeting how the adverse effects of so many in the military that were forced to take this. And it's just not about facts. It's about our freedom. This is about liberties and freedom, as Commissioner Hall has brought up. And we should all have the opportunity to take whatever we want, if that is what we want to do, just as people say, my body, my choice. Okay, well, that's what I'm sticking with. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Michelle Kelly. She'll be followed by Scott Sherman.
Thank you very much. My name's Michelle Kelly. I've lived here for about 20 years or so, and some of the things I'm going to say are not going to sit too well with anybody, but it's a platform. First off, COVID-19 is a manufactured virus. It's patented. I've had a lot of time in the last 8 years to do a lot of research about a lot of things. And if you go take a look at it, it's the SARS-CoV-2 that was manipulated to become manufactured COVID-19. There is no such thing. And if it's patented, it's not real. Natural viruses cannot be patented. SARS-CoV-2 is a natural virus. Secondly, there were no trials on the MMR. I did a lot of study in that because my grandchildren were going to get vaxxed by their mother who didn't read anything. And the only one that was a MMR trial that produced autism in a trial sample of little black boys. And they all got autism. Dr. Thompson, who was in charge of that, threw the report into the garbage as he was instructed to do. And just recently, in the last 2 years, he came out and admitted to that. Now I'm going to go to some personal things. First of all, everybody else's health is not my responsibility. You have people that smoke and drink and do drugs. I'm not going to worry about them. Those are their choices, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say God. God gives you free will. So you take care of yourself. That's your job. So as far as somebody mandating that I should wear a mask, take a shot, stay in the house, don't go shopping, because somebody's health is going to be impacted. Not my problem. My dog's not in that fight. Here's my own personal experience with doctors, and some of the doctors here have been less than competent. First of all, I went to an endocrinologist with a problem. There was a test taken, and he immediately said, well, we're going to have you take this pill, then you're going to have an x-ray, and then you're going to, and then we're going to take out your thyroid. I said, no, you're not. You're not taking out my thyroid. Give me the medicine. Because I was familiar with it, I did my research, and I already had the thing. The second example I have is going to a primary care doctor that decided that I had COPD, a heart aneurysm, and third-stage kidney failure. I was told that was on my summary. We never discussed it. I have nothing. I have no problems like that, and it's in my summary from that doctor. I know another person who was told he had a heart attack. He said, I didn't have a heart attack. And this is recently. I had a dentist that told me I had to have 4 teeth pulled. I stopped and I said, your job is to keep my teeth in my head. Now, for a little follow-up, the endocrinologist was arrested. The dentist was arrested for felonious behavior.
If you could summarize.
Well, it's my feeling that don't just trust what you think you're seeing on TV or reading. Do your own research. You're responsible for your own health, and you should take care of it. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Scott Sherman. She'll be followed by Kathy Maines. He will be followed by Kathy Maines. I'm sorry. It's like 45 into these.
Mr. Miller, we're going to stop
these days, it
we're going to
doesn't
stop
matter.
at 12:30. Okay, so however we can.
Yes, sir.
We can squeeze in, and then we'll come back at 1:30.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Commissioners. We do appreciate your time and your attention to this matter. We are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, and governments are instituted among men to protect those rights. It's not about whether you believe masks work or whether you believe vaccines work. It is about our freedom. It is our freedom to choose. So we really appreciate you guys having the wisdom to put this on the docket and to vote for it. Thank you very much.
Your next speaker is Kathy Maines. She'll be followed by John Mayo.
Hi, my name is Kathy Maines. I've been a pharmacist in the community for over 30 years. The last 13 years was working in a hospital. I'm no longer there for several reasons, which I won't get into. A lot of it having to do with the last 3 years of the pandemic. My training is, I received my degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I did a postgraduate training program in Oregon at the Oregon Health Sciences University. I currently hold 3 licenses in 3 different states, and I'm a consultant pharmacist. I also have certification for collaborative practice pharmacy agreement. But, you know, I have a lot of experience as a pharmacist in the healthcare profession, working in many different areas, including hospital, retail, home health care. What I witnessed in the last 3 years has just floored me as I saw many healthcare professionals turn a blind eye to what was going on. I'm not representing any type of hospital or any type of pharmacy. I'm just going to share my personal experience. But where I was working recently, we as pharmacists were given a 10% raise before the vaccine came out. We were all kind of shocked at that, and they were just told that we were doing such a good job at our jobs that they wanted to give us that raise. In over 30 years of practicing as a pharmacist, I've never received more than a 3% raise, and a 3% raise was great at that, point in time. I don't know what other people do, or get as far as raises, but basically it's cost of living. With that being said, then the vaccines rolled out. If we all got fully vaccinated, the pharmacists that is, we received another 10% raise. In talking with a lot of the other pharmacists, they went back and forth whether they were going to receive the vaccine or not. And I would say probably 50% of them were not going to. From the research they did, from the knowledge that they had, they said they definitely would not consider getting this vaccine. It hadn't been out long enough. It hadn't gone through enough research. There was a lot of concerns about it affecting the DNA. But anyways, when that second 10% raise came out after, if they got fully vaccinated, every single one of them got vaccinated except for myself. And it just goes to show how people are being coerced into things with money and finances. I saw it at the hospital. We've already discussed that, and you had mentioned if things were talked about already, not to repeat it. So we already talked about the financial incentives of hospitals. So we don't need to go into that. But yes, I did witness that. So what I did was the last 3 years, I spent my own personal time after work, got very little sleep, just helping people stay out of the hospital, stay healthy, get treatments that would work,
If you could
fight with the pharmacies.
If you could sum up, ma'am.
Pardon?
If you could sum up, your time's up, but if you could
Sure.
sum up.
fight with the pharmacies to fill the prescriptions of the ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, whatever would work. They were afraid to fill prescriptions with the azithromycin for some reason. I'm not sure why that is still. I guess it was because of maybe their supervisors telling them they couldn't. But so many people died because of lack of treatment is what I witnessed. And so that has been my goal now, is to just help people stay healthy, stay out of the hospital, and get treatments that are effective.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, your next speaker is John Mayo. That should be probably our last speaker before lunch, sir.
And we'll close the comments as soon as.
Yeah, I'll stop accepting slips. We'll still have like 9 people left.
Good, sir.
So thank you, commissioners. I'm kind of clean up for the before lunch break. So I don't really have anything prepared to say, but I'm just thinking. I'm a pretty good thinker off the top of my head, and I'm not going to dispute the experts on this side and the experts on the other side. But there are comments made that are striking. When we're talking about freedom, everybody has freedom. I have my freedom. My freedom is guaranteed by God and by the U.S. Constitution. And I hear things that have occurred in the last 3 years that they're likened to polio vaccine, and it's kind of ridiculous. I was born in 1949. I've never seen the country shut down businesses, tell people what jobs are critical, what jobs are not critical. If any of you could recall that as a citizen in the U.S., let me know. I don't ever remember seeing that. So I come down to this. You gentlemen are the voice for the people of Collier County. You actually have the obligation to ensure my freedoms. As was said by one of the commissioners, if somebody wants a vaccine, go for it. If somebody wants a mask that's useless, go for it. I'm not going to believe every scientist or pseudoscientist that came up here, but I do believe in my right as a U.S. citizen. And that right has been placed on your shoulders. I want my guarantees that I had growing up in this country, in the greatest country in the world, to be guaranteed for the future generation. So I've got about, did I run out of time? My clock never started here, so I have no idea how much time I have left. So again, you're not experts in medical treatment. I'm not an expert, but you know what your heart tells you, and you know what you've seen over the last 3 years. And what the last 3 years have been done to this country is atrocious in the guise of protecting people from some created vaccine, as created virus, as one speaker mentioned it. So I would implore you to vote for this resolution, vote for this that's before you, and provide for the safety and choice that everybody here is talking about that we all have. And I thank you very much, guys, and have a great lunch.
We'll